June 9th meeting order. Everybody rise for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Kevin Scramlin.
Here.
Janelle Keller.
Here.
Teresa Bills.
Here.
Jim Christopher.
Here.
Keith Wiederhold.
Here. Excuse me, approval of the agenda. We do have two things to add on. If you would make letter F is a DirecTV contract renewal.
DirecTV.
Yep. And G is for the Renaissance Festival, 3-year special use permit. If anybody has anything else?
This is also if there's anything you need to pull out of the consent
Oh,
agenda.
yes.
This is also where you would do that.
I say we pull the treasurer's investment report out of the consent agenda since it does not exist this month yet.
That would be a good idea. So we just actually need to just eliminate that.
Yes,
entirely.
let's just eliminate that. That is not available today.
Anything else?
I motion that we accept the agenda for June 9th with the modifications as noted.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment? Anybody that would like to make a comment can do so now. Chestnut? Nobody? All right. So the consent agenda, fire board, special township, board meeting. There's the approval of the accounts, revenue expense form, and our MTA dues, our annual dues are on there for the year. If there's nothing else,
I just have a quick question. On the premium pass, what date does it start? What date does it end? I mean, it's for 1 year, right?
It's for 1 year and I don't remember if the date was on there or not.
That's what I couldn't recall.
July 1st.
Okay.
that's when it starts. All right.
I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Caitlin, the floor is yours.
Would you like me to present all 3 items, one kind of leading right into the other?
You wanna do one at a time?
Okay, well, yeah, she'll do one at a time, but all together.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the first one is talking about the noise ordinance. So last time you saw me, we kind of went through some initial kind of concepts. I was able to talk with your township attorney. We were able to make some different changes, but decided that we wanted to come back, make sure there's some different policy preferences to make sure we draft something that works for the township. So the first thing I bulleted was a change that we were considering from quiet hours to go from regular hours from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. That's what it, or 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. That was our normal working hours. We chose to change that by an hour to say noise could start at 6 a.m. Something I was not aware of that the municipal attorney had mentioned is that a lot of our gravel operations start at 7. And so I wasn't aware if the rest of the township was aware of some of those different land use type decisions. And so the question I had is, do we want to keep with one number as opposed to keeping with 2 different numbers of operating? And then just keeping in mind, I guess, if you were in your neighborhood or things of that nature, when would we consider it to be a nuisance? Is it at that 6 or at that 7? So just verifying again when we want to make sure quiet hours stops in the morning at 6 or 7.
So, question, Caitlin, are you suggesting if we were to have 2 starting points, one would be exclusively for mining or gravel or similar?
Right. And that's not uncommon, so certain special land uses you can tie to based on the appropriateness of what's around them and different things of that nature. but we do have a few of them, and so since they are relatively in lockstep, I wondered, I wasn't aware of that. So that might be something we wanna consider.
Do they have, do the gravel pits have any other, special considerations, like with their land use? Like say a farm can operate and do things that we can't do at home because of the Farm Act, right, the farm. Is there anything in the gravel industry that says that they can make noise all night or?
Nope.
No, they have.
Nope, we can limit that, because of the nuisance factor associated with it.
I wanna add, I don't know if it was planning commission or previous board, but there was there were some neighbors that were around the M15 operations at Bedrock that were complaining that he was starting to, operations too early. And, that was set at 6 o'clock. So I'm just saying that because it's not just mining. I think we had to extend it to that operation as well. And apparently that operation is grandfathered in from the 40s. So I just wanted to share that with the board. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I kinda like the idea of 7 AM unless your use has been granted special permissions due to consent judgment. I don't know, grandfathered permissions, whatever, if there was a way that I kinda like that, but I guess if you have construction trucks going by at 6 AM, maybe people don't care. What do you guys think?
I kind of opt for the two rules. If you're in that industry at 6, and everything else 7. Might be cleaner and easier.
So the consensus is to return it to the 7 to 11 as operating hours.
With the exception of 6 for the gravel companies and.
In similar industries.
Yeah.
Well, and they already have the rules tied to them, so I don't have to specifically list them in the noise
For their
ordinance.
consent judgment,
Correct.
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
And I put some language that makes that more clear in the draft that's in front of you. And so, let's see, that language is on page 2 and 3, where I tried to talk about, special noise permit, approvals, in 14-438. That's where I put in talking about special land uses, and so if you have a special land use that's different than the hours we specified, you would follow your special land use, so we do not have those conflicting provisions. So the draft in front of you, the colored, font is essentially changes that are proposed from your original. There's a few removals of definitions that we all agreed upon, your attorney agreed upon it, that I didn't change to minimize how much color and movement throughout the page. One of the other things, under that heading for 438, is that rather than calling it a waiver, it was the preference to consider it a special event approval. And so that's where I mentioned tying it to a special land use. And I didn't know if there was other special event permits that you wanted to be, that I wasn't aware of, that we should connect that to. So some communities, if there's a parade or something like that, there's a special permit that you have to do to get that exemption. I wasn't aware of any, but wanted to verify with the board if you were aware of any other activities other than that special land use to be considered of.
Probably the only event that I would, which, I don't even know if it's considered an event, is Rotten Manor can get loud with some of their.
Yep, and that's part of their
Things.
special land use, yep.
Right, so other than that though, I don't.
Okay, just checking.
I can't think of anything.
And then the next is talking about, in the section below, it used to be called exemptions, but exclusion from enforcement is my new coining for it. But essentially what we talked about, is we wanted to allow farms to be able to operate at any point in time, so you have to,
Can
allow.
I just stop you there, Kate,
Sure.
and back up for just a minute? Up under noise limits, there's a line in there that says excessive or not consistent with the character of the surrounding area. What's that supposed to imply?
So we went from a, objective system where you take your noise meter and go to the edge to a subjective standard. And so the intention is that a reasonable person can stand on a property line and say, is this excessive? And so that was the intention of that.
Doesn't that leave it very vague, very wide open? I mean, what's excessive for me may not be excessive for Jim.
Correct.
So we're better off to take the DBA level out of there, or the DB level, I should say.
So there's pros and cons to that. So the objective system is that it is very straightforward. You can go to a property line, you can have somebody trained to take the measurements, they take the measurements, it's a pass-fail. As opposed to a more subjective standing in which you have, again, somebody that's going to a property line, saying is it excessive or not. So for some communities, they prefer these subjective because a enforcement officer or a member of law enforcement or any other public official can stand in the line and say, so this was excessive in character. We have cell phones now that can record noise. Granted, it's not the same thing, but it's just a matter of what level of compliance would you like to go. And so you can do either one. I know the previous supervisor was interested in looking into the subjective because that was the preference of the state police at the time. Now, do we have to make that switch? We do not. We can maintain it at objective reading where we can have that clarity. That's correct.
Did we, at the last meeting, did we agree to subjective?
We did, but my only question is when I read that is, it makes it so hard, in my opinion, to enforce
Especially
it.
during the day. Yeah, so could you not be playing your radio while you're planting a garden? Like what, like you said, what becomes excessive to a neighbor? I don't know. Or what if you have a graduation party and everybody's hooting and hollering? Technically, this would open it up for someone to complain, correct?
Somebody could complain. That doesn't mean that you would go and vet the situation in that specific situation.
So when might we?
So you would take in those different, again, violations and things of that nature, and then you essentially, most jurisdictions, what they do is they get initial inquiry. Some communities either require you to put your name down or not. Sometimes the name does help make sure that there's some ownership behind the complaint.
Right.
And then the township then reaches out to the other party, says, did X and X happen at X date? It goes back to what do we want to make sure that we're doing enforcement on. So we could do it on somebody that decides to, again, blast their music. Now if it's during 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that's not necessarily excessive for that daytime. But if they're doing it at 2 in the morning when we have the quiet hours, that would be considered excessive.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we would clearly go after, especially with repetitive offenses. In talking with the municipal attorney, with the current language you have where it's measurable, typically what we're doing is we're facilitating a discussion between neighbors. He was unaware of anything that led to the full litigation component. It is more difficult sometimes to do it when it's that level of litigation, when you are based on subjective, but some of those cases that do make it that far, it's a very clear, blatant nuisance factor, and you go through that process of recording what is that nuisance and how is that being done. So going to the exclusions for enforcement, so we talked about specifically wanting to not restrict farmers from being able to do their job within the noise limit constraints. And the attorney had mentioned you could go 2 ways, and we didn't specifically talk about this in depth. So one thing you can do is you could tie it directly to the Right to Farm Act. So anything that is a commercial operating farm would be under that exemption. The current language that's drafted is any farm operation not exclusive to commercialization. So the Right to Farm Act only applies for people that are raising livestock that are then being sold, as opposed to someone that has a hobby farm. Granted, a certain percentage of your income, you fall into that other category. But if I just have chickens or ducks or whatever, and I just grow it for myself, or if I just do hay for my horses, that's not considered protected under the Right to Farm Act and would not apply in this situation. So I wanted to take a step back. The attorney had recommended to make sure we clarified if we wanted to lump all farm animals, and all farm operations, or did we wanna say just the commercialized ones are meant for this exclusion?
You're talking animals too, not just equipment.
Correct. And that's something that's different from community to community. It's not uncommon, so Rose Township, they do enforce on animal nuisances. The attorney had mentioned to me that the township has in the past gotten involved in noise from animal complaints. So when he saw that in the draft, that's why it's also listed on, do we want to make sure that's an exemption, or is that something our residents would expect us to have at least a conversation and intervene?
What animals are gonna make a bunch of noise?
Peacocks, roosters,
So we already have a rule that says roosters have to be on a certain size property, right?
Well, that's,
Right now, we say no roosters at all.
no, 10 acres or more, you can have roosters.
So the idea being that that size parcel would be far enough away from other people that a rooster shouldn't be bothersome.
But there is language today to prohibit any rooster.
And even on a 10 acre?
yeah, we don't allow roosters.
It is in the proposed language here.
And that's original.
No, that was not. That was,
I thought it was the original one said no.
Yeah, that.
the original said no roosters if you were less than 10 acres.
Yeah.
Okay, fair, yeah.
That's what I thought too.
But now the new one says no roosters at all.
Uh,
We'll get there, let's focus on this county. But roosters would be an example, guinea hens, peacocks, goats. I think goats was maybe one that we had the legal situation with before, but part of that was, I think, because they were like wandering in the road.
And,
right?
and dogs barking is not uncommon for a noise nuisance. Sometimes neighbors do complain about that and use the
Yeah.
noise ordinance as part of that.
I'm gonna let you guys take the farm one, cause I'm biased, so I'm gonna tell you they're fine.
Well, I personally, it was like, I don't know, there's a reason people move out here. They wanna have their farm animals, and I would have a hard time telling people, well, you know, you can't have a rooster. I know you got 10 acres, but sorry, no roosters. I think that that's a little too, my opinion, it's imposing our will upon them, and I'm not comfortable with that.
It also puts us into that different type of enforcement, like counting chickens. Now we gotta pick one up and look underneath and see if it's he or she.
Give them till they're teenagers and you'll know. So
but I don't hear the complaints, right? I'm not in that department. I don't get the phone calls, I don't hear the complaints. I would have to ask, are we getting complaints?
No, I would leave the farm one the way it is, and don't worry about the Right to Farm Act,
Okay.
cause that's only, point blank, that's only gonna cover 3 people in this township.
you're talking about just letter A?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, just letter A.
Mm-hmm.
so that is no animals included in that, and I totally agree.
Yep,
Yep, and I repeated it in D just to be abundantly clear for farm purposes. And so, one of the things, and again, so other townships can operate how they would like, so Rose Township
Yep.
specifically, they do noise enforcement on dogs barking. So if you have a neighbor that's barking, or dogs are howling at 2 a.m. every morning,
I think that's something we should address. I think we should have somebody, cause I think that is a complaint. I think there are people who have had complaints about that. But then, if we have that in our ordinance, then we have to do something about it.
and like I said, for most enforcement on noise, it doesn't get us far into litigation, and I verified that with your municipal attorney. It's usually brokering a conversation,
sure.
Right,
but yes.
ideally.
Yeah.
So it's just for clarification, this is saying properly zoned for that activity. So are you talking about like rural estate farm, or are you specifically saying it needs to be agricultural?
So we don't have a exclusive ag zoning district. We have the,
REF,
yes,
Residential.
which has our agricultural and single family homes.
okay. So if you had animals on a residential property, like an R1, or whatever we're calling that now.
Sure.
This does not apply. Is that accurate? So say someone has 2.5 acres, they're not considered, or just under 2.5, they're not considered RAF, but are operating a maybe hobby farm. Does this apply to them?
So if it's zoned accordingly, then that means the use is permitted. So otherwise they're illegal then in 2 ways, technically then.
Well, our current ordinance though would allow them to have these animals,
Okay.
but it isn't. I guess I'm just not sure if that would be a business operation or farm operation. You know what I'm saying? I guess I'm looking more at like those little hobby farms is what I'm thinking.
Sure.
Like if the animals are allowed there, are they still falling under this?
Yeah, and then
Business
I
operation?
would consider it zoned, so again, if they're allowed to operate those uses
Okay.
there, then they
Then
are
it's okay.
properly zoned.
Okay.
But, I can see where you're getting to that confusion, so maybe zoned isn't the right word there to make it abundantly clear. Rather, it's that if it's a permitted activity.
Okay, sure.
I think
Yep.
that might make it a little bit easier to understand.
I got a question. What are we doing about, Foghorn Leghorn? They're okay? Roosters?
We haven't got that far yet.
Okay.
And so it sounded like there was some interest in potentially, or so I'm on D, looking at dog or other animal noises. Do we want to enforce those or not? Because we kind of argued both sides of that, potentially.
I can tell you, I don't want to.
Don't want to enforce it.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I live in the 1 acre slums over on the east side. Dogs honestly don't bother me. I hear some barking dogs sometimes, it doesn't bother me, and there's people on my street have roosters, and it honestly doesn't bother me either.
I mean, hey, we've had this conversation 100 times. Everybody moves out here and tells you it's the country and they love it, and we do. I'm not worried about the dog barking. And to be honest with you, if the neighbor's dog's barking, in my opinion, that's between you and the neighbor to work something out.
Yeah, well, that's the unfortunate thing. I feel like so many of these things are really between, like, you should be talking to your neighbor.
You know, I hate being over policed. I do.
Nope, so I will keep it as drafted. We're not enforcing that. Okay. The other one that we wanted to, that was mentioned, was to talk about off-roading vehicles. So again, some communities, if you have your teenager going out at 4 a.m, starting up on their different motor vehicles, does the township want to get in that facilitation of the keep the peace for the neighborhood or no?
Wouldn't they be subjected to the same rules as like 7 a.m.? To, isn't that the general idea?
Yeah, so generally they could start at 7 a.m.
Mhm.
But if they, let's say, rowdy teenagers, school's out, they start at 5 a.m. Is that something the township wants to get involved in? Or would it be the expectation of the complaining residents that the township could say, I'm at least gonna broker a decision? Because part of it is when there's a complaint, the township board still has the decision to what level of effort you put towards a complaint. That does not mean you have to go to the full extent. You can
Right.
have those different components. So there is that. But would the public expect the township were to be involved, at least at some level, in these brokering a deal? Which you could also do without the ordinance. You could say, hey, this seems to be bugging your neighbor, can we sort this out?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I would rather try to work with them than to actually have that in our ordinance on that case. And odds are they're gonna be doing it after 11 o'clock. Not that early in the morning.
Right.
This is really just for informational purposes. So in the 5-6 years, however many years I've been here, I will tell you that most of the noise complaints that we've received have been off-road vehicles, four-wheelers, whatever, bikes, dogs, animals, and your loud neighbor that you think's playing the radio too loud. With what we have right here, we can't do a thing about any of those things effectively. The only one would be maybe the radio, I suppose.
During the day, yeah.
Yeah, so just for informational purposes, only because that really is where the complaints are coming from. So in a way, it almost is like, just so you know, we're not really gonna help.
Those
Which is
off-road
fine,
vehicle
but-
complaints, are they generally on people's property or they're on the roads?
What do you mean?
When you get those complaints about the off-road vehicles, is it on someone, like a person on
It's
their own
usually on
property?
their own property, yeah. So I'm just sharing that with you because, and I do believe that most of those, if not all of them, should be exempt. I don't think we should be going after neighbors because they've got a dog barking or a chicken or cockadoodle doing or whatever. But that was just more informational so that you know, most likely this is where all of those will fall. So we will either have to foster a discussion or we'll have to just be able to respond to our constituents and say, we're not helping you with that, which is okay, but again, just so that everyone knows where most of our complaints come from.
Does, excuse me, maybe I'm wrong when I say this, but like the off-road vehicle one, so would they still fall under the 11 to 7 deal?
Correct.
They
So-
would,
Right, so we'd want quiet hours during those times.
yeah, that's, so
and
they
if-
still fall under that.
Correct,
Well,
so,
that is not how we have it listed.
That's
It
my
says,
question.
Noises will not be enforced by the township.
oh, sorry, I misunderstood.
For this list.
Correct, so we wouldn't just be enforcing it during quiet hours. So it would be correct, not enforcing them whatsoever, even during quiet hours.
Well, you said that.
Yeah.
I mean, with the off-road vehicles, I would think they should still be under 11 to 7.
Like 11 PM to 7 AM,
Yeah.
they cannot
They're
be
not
out there.
They
right.
should
a bunch of
fall
I mean,
under
that's
those.
just
I agree.
that's just being a decent neighbor.
Correct.
That would be one I would pull out. Anybody else?
Where do we categorize the Hell's Yuppie that comes home in a Harley with open exhaust? Is that simply, we don't worry about it?
Be your B,
Correct, that would be your B.
under exemptions.
Yeah,
So some communities, if you drive around, you'll see that they don't let you do the, clutch braking, cause it's a louder noise. That's that same type mentality.
okay.
So we are gonna, just to make sure I have the right consensus, we're gonna remove C from fully exempted and keep that to the 7 AM to 11 PM quiet hour maintaining.
Correct.
Okay. For my understanding too, again, let's say somebody wanted to be super excessive with mowing their lawn at 7 in the morning and things, that's fine. But as soon as you're doing it at 3 in the morning, that's more saying, that's excessive. Okay,
Right.
got it. See here in the letter. So then the last, kind of component that we wanted to make sure that we are keeping in mind is when do we wanna make sure the township can step in and say again, this noise is excessive, we would like to be able to clearly, definitively do something. So gravel operation noises, things tied to special land uses. One of the things with our quiet hours, that's part of that 7 to 11, you can have construction taking place but not at 2 in the morning or things of that nature. Is there anything else, just if you're thinking of complaints that you've heard of neighbors that we want to make sure we go after, just to make sure, as the attorney and the planner, we make sure that we have language that enforces it.
I can't think of any. Well, I'm not the person who takes those calls.
I can't think of anything.
Cause I know the one thing in hindsight I didn't really talk about is watercraft, but I don't know that you'd have that
Mhm.
majorly, so, okay.
We're good.
Okay. So with that then, what I would propose the next steps would be is I'd, finalist draft.
I'm so sorry, Caitlin, can we go back?
Oh, yes,
I'm so sorry. I had a quick question. So the loading and unloading,
yes.
we have that separately. Loading, unloading, opening, closing, or other handling of boxes, crates, containers, building materials, or similar objects between 11 and 6 in such a manner as to cause a noise disturbance. Is this necessary when we've already restricted it up top, like right above that anyway? Like any noise, haven't we kind of already identified that? Since we took out a lot of those other examples, I just wasn't sure like what the purpose for that specific one was.
Sure, I guess what I was thinking of identifying is that we are allowing that use or that activity to take place. It just has to be even quieter at a residential line. So that's something that I could craft, I think, a little bit more specifically, but you're not supposed to have any noise disturbance between 11 and 6 as opposed to nothing excessive. So that's the threshold difference, is I don't want to hear anything from your operation moving when it's regarding loading and unloading, but when it's the noise limit, we don't want it to be excessive. So that's the difference.
So this would really apply to somebody who owns a business or something, and then say there's a house that's located near it, and I'm trying to understand this. Am I correct in interpreting this to mean if I own a business and there's a resident next to me, I can't start doing business, so to speak, anything regarding it until after 6 a.m.
You
Making
can.
any noise. I shouldn't be making any noise before 6 a.m., but not excessive noise until 7 a.m.
That's right.
Sounds fair. I mean, is that the way it's worded right now? This is new.
Correct. Because right now, the current language doesn't really talk about the difference between your commercial and your residential. So how it's written right in the draft is just to residential, so commercial to commercial or industrial, 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 commercial. This wouldn't apply. So if you're already in Dixie, your neighbors are all commercial. If you have the Coca-Cola truck come, that's not a big deal. But when you get towards more of a residential type field, that is where we want to minimize any level of nuisance. Because right now, zoning wouldn't help you with this situation.
So for instance, if Whiskey River takes a shipment at 5 a.m., well, what is the adjacent parcel to Whiskey River? I don't know. Is there a residential next to it? Is it far enough away?
Yeah, but they're in Springfield Township, so we don't care.
What about their backing up to, I mean, like, I'm just trying to figure out where does this apply, and so at the risk of sounding like I'm uneducated, I am not as educated on these ordinances, and I don't feel like I can give you a whole lot of smart input, because I don't work with ordinances.
Sure. And
Well, that's
So-
what I was asking.
And I think the biggest thing is Dixie is a developing corridor, as so is Ortonville Road. So you do have some different clustering of those commercial
Okay.
properties. So you have, that I think you'll have that currently with your current master plan, you have it upzoning, you have the desire for more commercial. I don't know in our current master plan, or if we do that update, if we foresee that happening where you're gonna have more of that commercialization, in which this may be invoked more.
For the time being, Caitlin, I think we could just take it out and just live with that 11 to
Okay.
6 normal rule. I'd just take that paragraph off.
Is it your recommendation that to confirm to commercial entities, hey, you're in this too? Like, would it be helpful to say this applies to both residential and commercial use?
With the language that we revised, it has made it more simplistic because I took out just residential and just left it at receiving land uses.
Okay.
So I took out that
Yeah.
they are exempted from this excessive idea.
Okay.
So I think we are covered now
Okay.
for all of them.
I've got a question. In the one we're talking about now, how do we handle the condition where I've ordered something, it's coming down Brant Road, and it's for my own personal use, but they've got to unload it on a pallet from using a high low? That's how I thought this might say, that would limit my scheduling to not disturb the local neighbors if I'm getting such a delivery.
Correct, because it would be even residential to residential.
If we take this out, have we lost that ability for the 2 times a year in the township that might happen?
So we do still
Or is
have
it
for
important?
construction, so if it is a major delivery like a pole barn, supplies or something of that nature, we do have C.
How about a big barbecue?
No, we wouldn't be, well, so we would go to that excessive provision. Is this an excessive noise that being dropped off and?
I got it, you answered it, thanks. I just couldn't get through it.
Sure. Okay, so I will, take this draft, back to the municipal attorney, see if we need to iron it out anymore.
No. I have one more thing, but I'll just, I was just that noise
Oh.
permit section.
Yes.
Is it more beneficial for us to have that under the noise permit approval section?
So you're talking about 37, also including 38?
So, it would be
Or
437D sliding into section 438, would that be more like,
I guess what I was attempting to do is preamble 30, or having D that preambles 38, to make sure it's a cross-reference, but
Okay.
I see what you mean where
No,
you
yeah.
don't necessarily have to do that.
just cause they follow one another, but,
Correct.
but no, I see what you were trying to do there. I mean, that's not, I was just curious, I'm not really passionate either way or the other.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
You have a question out
Mr. Supervisor, Chairman Chestnut,
We
600
don't,
South.
we don't take questions.
Come on, that was the past regime. Just a question, so in the middle of the night, and it comes up on the fake space group all the time, how is enforcement handled? Because the way I understand it is, this is a local ordinance, the state police has no, how do you handle it?
I'm sorry, back it up. You said in the middle of the night? Is that
So
what
the
you-
quiet hours,
You would be calling the state police.
okay, will they enforce the local ordinance then?
That is part of the reason this has been redone,
Okay.
is for the state police.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
there. It was difficult for them to have a DB meter on hand.
Yeah.
So this way they can come out and go, okay, is this
'Cause that-
excessive?
And I think one thing that gets lost too, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, you know, talk about unloading something in the street or something, if you're doing it one time, I don't think anybody's gonna call on you, but if you're doing it 5 nights a week, I think, and that's kind of what they're headed for.
What's out of a car, we drop it off at the, in the chip, we drop it off at the the street.
Yeah, so. Okay,
Alright, so that's the noise ordinance. The next item, I believe, on the agenda is the master plan. So in front of you is the master plan proposal. I was requested to develop this for the township. Essentially what it is a full rewrite of your current master plan, looking at various different sections. We propose to restructure it so it's a more traditional master plan layout with goals and objectives, your future land use, your implementation plan. We did provide 3 options for public engagement. The only thing you're required to do by state statute is to hold a public hearing. That's including your scope. So it's a matter of if you wanted to entertain additional ways to get public engagement. So I listed those 3 different options. That's something that you could add on if you wanted to. We're anticipating this to take about 11 months, so about a year to do front end. There is a 63-day review period that's required. So there's some waiting periods there. So if there's any questions about the proposal, I'm happy to answer that, and help anyway.
What page are we looking at here?
goes past the.
Yeah, this one has, okay.
Oh, is that not me?
Maybe the person put the packet together though.
It could be, I'm not sure. Okay, so.
I just give you letters.
Master
Put it together.
It's 61 of one,
Okay.
and on the PDF.
So if you keep going, you're gonna want the next.
What was the extras, Caitlin?
So
I'm
it's-
sorry.
if you wanted to do public engagement, so there's a community survey, so we would have some limited paper copies and digital copies, available. We would customize that survey to what we actually wanna hear from the public on. We have boilerplate language, of course, but really focus it on what are information that's helpful. Next is talking about a community visioning and brainstorming workshop. So that's a community meeting. It's about 2 hours. We try to host it somewhere like the fire hall or something of that nature. We go through, do a few different exercises that are hands-on for residents to be part of. And then we have an open house. This is the public engagement that happens near the end of the process. So we've already worked through some different situations, and what the open house is nice for is it's a two-way conversation with typically boards throughout the room, so somebody can walk in, do their 5-minute survey and leave if they wanted, but some of it's educational. So we say this is how roads work within our community, this is how they're funded, this is our 5-year plan working with the county. So it's educational. Do we have the right priorities? And getting that verification buy-in. If you did the open house, I'd assume the different corridors as far as how much development you want, that would be something we'd ask the public to vote on. Do you want to see option A, B, or C? So that's what the open house can sometimes be helpful for, getting people in there, getting their input, and helping us prioritize what is the best strategy.
I'm so sorry, Caitlin, you said that would be at the very end of the process?
Correct. That would be near the end of the master plan process, because we want to make sure we typically come up with those alternates,
Okay.
scenarios or things
Sure.
of that nature.
What would be the difference between that then and the visioning and brainstorming workshop? Wouldn't that be where a lot of the ideas come from?
That is one of the ways you could do it, correct. So the visioning and brainstorming is gathering information, so we do typically like a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We can also do some scenarios, but we haven't usually gone this far in the master plan process. So it's an earlier on, what are our values, verification of what do we think would work, so brainstorming more so.
Alright.
So the community visioning and brainstorming is coming up with the plan. The open house is, hey, this is the plan we've drafted so far. What do you think?
That's
Right?
correct.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we have to update the master plan, so this is something we've gotta do. I guess, in my mind, the decision would be what public engagement do we wanna do, which obviously, we wanna do some.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you wanna do the visioning and brainstorming workshop, or if you wanna wait till later in it, do the open house.
Is the visioning and brainstorming, is that the stakeholders, is that the
We recommend that you, for either event, we recommend that you approach different groups and say, we'd really like you to be here. If you just put a flyer up and say, hey, come to our public meeting, you are not gonna garner as much.
Yeah.
And so it's important, again, if you know those stakeholder groups, to reach out and say, hey, Holly Schools, we'd really like to have some input from your organization, you impact our community a lot, or the library, wanting to get some of those key stakeholders there.
I remember going to the last time that the board had done this, a brainstorming workshop, I think it was earlier on. And I loved that opportunity to be able to go and meet with the board members and I mean, it probably was the first time I really kinda got a little bit more engaged.
Was that the one that Ben Tallarico hosted?
I don't even remember who it was, but it
It
was,
was up at a,
yes, it was
at a
at
facility
Tamarack.
up at Camp Tamarack?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was there. That was great.
yeah. So I personally like that piece.
They had us spread out at different tables
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we gave input and lots of little dots that we had to go and
Yes, we
mark
did a
around.
lot of that, yes, I remember
Yes.
Yep, and that's more consistent with the visioning meeting.
that. Yeah, I like that.
And I do think that people valued that, and they referred back to that numerous times. They're like, we said we didn't want a big box store.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, right, but, so I do think that that's important. I see that under optional public engagement, you've got some additional pricing down there, so that's not included in the fee of 22,000?
Correct.
I like the visioning and brainstorming.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, you're fine.
Just out of curiosity, do you usually find that you have a lot of input from the Survey Monkey?
It depends on the community, but you're not looking at a statistically valid statistic, typically. So for most of my townships, even if you have the QR code and you send it on all the tax notices or things of that nature, you still aren't reaping a very high percentage.
Right.
And so, I find that the workshop or the open house, you can advertise it a bit more strategically and say, so we are gonna talk about, I guess I like to poke the bear, I will say, we will talk about BES at one of these workshop meetings, and it will be a small portion of that conversation. Maybe it's a sticker component to verify some things that we're aware of or explain the process. But making sure we're talking about things people care about in the community. That's what's gonna draw them there, and if they come for one issue, we still wanna hear your input on the other 5 that we also wanna talk about that night. So that's part of this being a facilitator of that discussion.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Go for it.
If we, so like the open house, in theory, I like it, I like the idea, but could we also make that decision later on in this process? I see that it's only good for 120 days, the cost.
Oh, yep, so we could always add an optional item later on in the process.
Okay.
Correct.
So just, I mean, I don't know what everybody's
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, no,
I
I was
was
gonna
just
ask that
curious.
myself.
Yeah, I would feel comfortable with the visioning and brainstorming workshop at this time,
Yeah.
but I agree, I don't think the survey would be all that beneficial.
Yeah.
I don't think people take the time to do that, but I think if we reach out specifically and we, you know, reach out to people, I think people would come to a visioning and brainstorming
too.
workshop. I really do, I think there are a lot of interested parties, you know?
Anybody else? I'll make a motion then that, we accept the proposal from Wade Trim for the master plan for 22,000, adding on the community, vision and brainstorming workshop, so it'd be a total of 24,000. With me as the signer.
For the development of the new master plan, this takes it from start to
Yep.
finish.
Yeah.
I will support that.
Well, you wanna do a roll call, please?
Janelle Keller,
Yes.
Teresa Bells,
Yes.
Jim Christopher,
Yes.
Keith Wiederhold.
I just have a question, do we wanna do the open house too?
We can add it.
Let's wait for the Saturday, okay. Yes.
Okay, Kevin Scramlin.
Yes.
Thank you, we'll get going on that.
Which one's?
So I didn't know if C was the text amendments or if that's the other proposal.
That's why I just
Okay.
said, hey, that's not on there. So we'll start with zoning and roll into those.
Okay. And so the other proposal that was requested by the township was the zoning ordinance update. So one of the things is that we wanna make sure that when you do the zoning ordinance update, it has to be based on your master plan. So, regardless if we do the zoning ordinance update, we wanna proceed with the master plan several months into that process before you touch the zoning ordinance to ensure that we're not just copying and pasting. That has not been my understanding from the current planning commission. We're rewriting it and reevaluating it because it doesn't work as well as we'd like it to. And so the zoning ordinance, though we did update something, there has been several different changes that we have not been aware of from a township perspective that we keep looking and we keep finding. The text amendments before you tonight, there are several of those that have been changed that the township wasn't aware of, and they are significant in nature, that causes some concern. And so as we keep finding all these little things, sometimes it's the easiest to start over that process, because it's not consistent with the values of our community, what requirements are for landscaping even. They are quite excessive for rural townships such as ours. So if we were interested in doing that zoning ordinance update, the first part would be that audit process. So what we do is we identify everything that we think is a potential concern or a change that you would want to do. From that initial identification process, we also included a zoning map, so there's been some awareness on changes that they also weren't aware of. Because you adopted the new zoning ordinance, you adopted a zoning map, And so that it's not a matter of correcting changes, your new map is the map that stands. Based on the direction of the audit, then you would create drafts and then you would go through the adoption process, which is not as lengthy as your master plan regarding surrounding jurisdictions and things of that nature. And so this process would take closer to 9 months. We do anticipate working with smaller groups initially through the audit, so getting the very interested members, potentially some strategic members of our township board, to provide that guidance, to be as effective with our time and materials. That's the general scope of the project. The main reason it's been requested, even though again, we have updated the the zoning ordinance somewhat recently, is that what was adopted is not working. And it is pretty significant. We're doing the essentials in the text amendment that's in front of you, but we keep finding other oopses or just confusions within the text.
I think a good place for us to start before your proposal is probably for us to put a committee together and go through this a little bit and maybe start picking out some items that we would like you to work on. I know there's a lot of them. But I would like our township to have first look at it. How's that? So I'm not opposed to putting together a committee to work on that. I think I'd feel better not picking on Caitlin, but not just throwing it in her lap and expecting her to oversee all of it. I think our township should be listening to our residents, and we should go through our zoning ordinances.
Sure.
And you can always have that as a boilerplate language for your next fiscal year. Typically what happens is you do your master plan first, then you update your
That's
zoning
what I was
ordinance.
thinking too.
So at least you have a general baseline of what you would be looking at.
Yeah.
Again, the text amendments you have in front of you now are what we deem the more essential.
Yeah.
And as we convert that Word document, it just makes it easier to make changes as they come about. I hate to do a whole comprehensive update, but as we keep finding all these things, it almost might be easier instead of doing several text amendments over the next 3 years just to fix.
Well, we'll table that, Caitlin, and we'll work on putting a group together to start digging through it.
Okay.
Now you can do the other.
Alright, so the other document that's in front of you is the zoning ordinance in ordinance form. I am understanding that this wasn't necessarily always done, but this is the very formal way to do it. To change an ordinance, you have to do it by ordinance.
That's what we wanna do.
And so your other ordinance didn't specifically have a great number, so we picked 55, which is the next one in sequence from your previous zoning ordinance. So if you were to consider adoption, that's why it has an ordinance number. It's not by resolution, it is an ordinance. So that's the method behind the number. I was thinking of going just kind of page by page of the different changes. So those changes are shown typically in red, other than there are some sections that are full additions because they were otherwise not in your current zoning ordinance. So the first set of amendments was regarding your accessory buildings. So one of the things we changed was for those that are attached to your building, so your garage area, rather than it being a strict 900 square feet, we've decided to make it proportionate, where it's 80% of the first floor area of the principal building. So it looks proportionate and it scales, as opposed to just 900.
Why wouldn't it be on total square footage of the house? Or living area, I should say.
Say that again?
Why wouldn't it be on the total square footage of the living area? Why would you exclude the upstairs?
So part of it's how you would do proportionality when you look at a house. So even if they have 2 stories, you could have a more massive accessory building with it. So if the first floor is your 100 foot and you can only have 80 foot next to it, as opposed to if you did the entire house and you would be doubling whatever that was. So that's why it's first floor, so when you look at a house, it doesn't look awkwardly unproportionate.
What's the average square foot of a 2.5 car garage, anybody know? 2 car garage, 500?
500 square feet.
I was trying to think if my garage burned down, if I could rebuild it or not. I don't know if I could, it'd be pretty close.
And this has been something staff has received requests about, and so that's what's facilitating this change, is that we're receiving variance requests for larger attached, when we previously didn't have language that was like this in the previous ordinance, is my understanding. So then the next set of changes is a cross-referencing changes. So again, below 2, that's being relocated, so it's next to the zoning district. So on page 2, that requirement is back in there. I just put it under the REF because we decided to so it used to be in the other section where it talks about accessory units in a different section, and I said typically you can choose to have it all in one place or you can have it in 2 places. They chose to have it in one place, so if you need to build an accessory building, you go one spot, not 2 spots. So this is the culmination of that, is this text is added, but is the similar requirements to what you already currently have in your book, just relocated. As far as different sizing, different colorations, that's something we minorly changed regarding screening and things of that nature. The biggest change is in Roman numeral 4, where we allow for 1 accessory building permitted administratively in the front yard, as long as they meet these 4 conditions: that the accessory building is 100 feet from the front, which is your right of way. You have a maximum detached accessory building that does not exceed 80% again of that floor area. So again, it's not larger than your home. If it's in the front, and then also ensuring that the detached accessory building is in that residential is similar in color and appearance. So maybe driving by, you wouldn't think much of it. And then D is that there's some level of screening from the roadway. So they can have arborvitae trees, they could choose to have shrubs. It's written very generalized to not necessarily be completely obscuring. That word is not used, it's just some type of screening. So if you have a fence that covers a portion of it, that's sufficient for what we're going for. But rather than requesting people to go to the planning commission to review that or go to the zoning board of appeals, this request is my understanding, has happened quite a lot over the time and is generally approved. But we want to make it so that it doesn't require variance every time. So I don't know if anyone else has more experience on that, but that was more or less what the planning commission was thinking. Any questions on accessory buildings before we move to the next topic?
I have lots of questions.
Okay.
Okay, so we are already doing the visually comparable colors. Do you know why, like, the screening then? Why are we screening it if we're already asking them to make it look like their home?
Because we're not requiring obscuring screening, so it's not that you can't see it, it's just the screening helps minimize the effect of it.
But it looks like their home, like they've obviously used quality material or something that looks comparable.
So we say that it has to be visually comparable, and that goes to that objective subjective. And so more or less, a reasonable person can look and say these are comparable, but the additional component of screening made it a little bit less intrusive to see that right of way. So that's why it was considered. You don't have to put it in there. Some communities don't.
Yeah, no, I was just curious what you guys had talked about, Jim, like what were your thoughts?
You know, we see a lot of this, and that's why we wanted to make it administrative, so to the first part. But you're talking about the obscuring component, right?
Well, yeah, just that we're kind of like asking for 2 things now, the
Just-
appearance of the building
just to
and also
soften it.
some,
That's my
Screening.
opinion. I mean, I'm being subjective from my opinion of it, I don't know with the other board members, but to soften the effect of it, and all of a sudden have something stark out there with no landscaping around it for years. I see it frequently. people don't put landscaping around it, it looks like dog meat after a while.
Minimum size shall not be less than 10% of the principal building. So right now, we do permit, we allow people, if they have like a small shed that's under 200 square foot, we don't ask for any type of building permit. So now we are looking at probably always, I would say for the most part, probably requiring a building permit for accessory buildings.
So that's only, the 10% is only for those in the front yard. So that doesn't apply to everything. So they can still have their front yard and that's still, dual purpose. If they choose to have an accessory building in the rear, they could have a larger building based on the acreage. It's just
Well,
if
this
it's.
is the minimum size allowed, not maximum. This is saying the minimum size is 10% of their building.
Correct, so if you're going to have something in the front, it has to at least be 10% of your building, because we don't want necessarily, to be permitting that small. So your typical house is at least 1,000 square feet. Like you said, being at 200 square feet, we don't require a building permit for anything smaller than that.
Okay. This kind of goes, this other question number, it's the lower, Roman numeral 3, I guess. Detached accessory farm buildings containing poultry or animal livestock. This is gonna be on page 7, so we're not quite there, Caitlin, but just, we'll have to loop back to that, cause it looks like there's some contradictory language there.
Okay. Do you like the numbers that are here, or do we like the numbers in the other spot better?
Oh, well, I don't know, I'd have to read it again now. So this one is saying it has to be 100 feet from any property line, and then the other one says 40 or 50 feet. So, they're just, it was just a little bit of a difference in, I'm now trying to find it, what did I
Yep,
say?
it's
Under number 1.
page 7B1. Well, it's 100 feet from any residential dwelling, which is different than the 50 feet from the rear setback.
But the last line there says 100 feet from any property line.
Oh, sorry, missed that. Okay, yep, that would be a contradiction. So we would want to either cross-reference that so small animals get a different preference. Let's see here. So we could change the number, cause it's in the page 7 for small animals, it has, the setback would be 50 feet from the rear or 40 feet from the side. And that's your chickens, rabbits, small animals such as that. As opposed to your larger animals, double checking, they do have a manure component associated with it, but otherwise they would be 100. So you can make a few different choices. So we could make it so then they're the same, where we would revise small and large animals to have that same setback. We could also change the chicken one so it is the 100 as an alternative. Or we could have it the 2 different standards based on the size.
Can we define detached accessory farm building for poultry? That is a chicken coop. So that, according to page 2, would have to be 100 feet from a residential dwelling.
Right.
Or according to page 7, would have to be 50 feet from the rear setback.
Right.
Well, I'll bet we've got a lot of people in this township who have chicken coops within 100 feet of their house. And
And within 100 feet from a property line for
oh,
sure.
absolutely.
Probably also 40 or 50.
And so you don't have to regulate that. I know the planning commission talked a lot about varying standards associated with the keeping of small animals. So some of those setbacks are original language where you currently have. but I would keep in mind, the reason you make rules is to follow rules. If you are not going to follow it, then you should change the rule.
Well, that's why I don't think we should say that they have to be at least 100 feet from any residential dwelling. I mean, who wants to walk at least 100 feet to go out to their chicken coop? You know what I mean? And then, so, I mean, if we're gonna have a rule and then we have to enforce it, gonna make people move their chicken coops? Or, I mean, most of them we probably would never know about, because people are not gonna come and tell us, oh, you know, mine doesn't match, or we're gonna take something out and measure, but I don't know.
I don't
I
wanna
think
be an
that's-
example for the one that does, and then he says what my neighbor says.
Right.
You know?
So I see that this on page 2 is written in red. What does our current one say? Does it have to be 100 feet away from your residential dwelling? Or is there nothing in it that says how far away it has to be from your residential dwelling?
I believe. Let's see. I think I pulled it.
I thought our current one just really talked about how many chickens you could have and what they, you know, how big the coop had to be, or that you had to have them fenced in unless you had a certain amount of property and,
Correct, so this would be a new requirement. And so that's something we could change to not have. So we could remove, again, the dwelling unit, we can modify the other setbacks as well.
I would like to do that.
Okay, so remove the residential.
Exactly.
Surprised you didn't pick that up, planning commission.
Yeah.
No, I'm in agreement too.
So no dwelling unit setback. Now we go to, there is a well setback of 50 feet. Do we want to be enforcing that or no? Okay,
I mean, that would mean we'd have to go out on their property. We don't even know when people get chickens, for the most part. I don't know who's got chickens and who doesn't.
sure.
But it's their yard. If they wanna put their chicken coop on top of their well, I suppose that's up to them.
So this
But-
could also be like rabbits or,
Correct.
Yeah.
just, yeah.
30 feet from the well.
yeah,
Right.
just, so that we're all on the same page, it's not just chickens, but my goats aren't by my well.
I like the storage, you can
I
have
don't
on
have
top of the well.
So then we have the setback of livestock buildings from property lines. So as mentioned before, chicken specifically, what was previously in there is the 40 feet from side and 50 from rear. So we can change that to meet that, and then small and large animals will play by the same rules, or we could have different rules for different sizes.
Does 25 feet sound familiar? Like maybe that's what it was before?
That would be unusual. Most zoning ordinances right now are shifting back to being more generous because generally people are able to accommodate chickens. You do not need a rooster to have productive chickens. So you see more zoning ordinances moving in that direction.
Okay.
But
I was just trying to remember.
I don't believe it was 25 because even chickens right now are that 40 and 50.
Okay. Anybody passionate about any of the numbers?
What are the current setbacks for just putting anything anywhere, right? Like, is this gonna be more or less restrictive than the general setbacks for, like, side yard setbacks for putting anything in?
Well, for an accessory building, we're looking at required setback 20 feet on the side, 25 feet from the rear line.
So what we would want then is something more restrictive than that. We want animal stuff to be further into our own property.
That is what this is currently indicating.
And that is something that we would be proposing as new, or that is something that we already have? I mean, that's written in black, not red. Page 7, letter B, number 1. It's not written in red, so I'm assuming that's what we already have.
Yeah, that's correct. Rear setback is 50, side is 40. Prior, it was specifically chickens.
Oh, so now we're just changing that to small animals?
Yeah, because we did not have specific language for goats, pigs, pretty much anything else except for horses. We had horses and chickens. We had some general language for livestock in there, but.
Okay.
So what are we thinking? Back, revert to that 50 and 40, or stick with the 25 feet as an accessory building?
I like the 25 feet. The only reason I say that is a lot of us is going on 2.5 acres. You know
Well,
what
I
mean?
thought that
Do
as
you want
well.
to just have it not be special standards and it be whatever accessory buildings are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what I would do is we would remove I entirely, so we're not treating them special, livestock buildings.
Which one is that? What are you removing? Sorry.
3.
6 3. Okay. Good.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And there isn't anything in SFR on that, so we don't have to worry about another edit in that section.
This one. Mhm.
Any other questions on accessory buildings while we're still in that section?
That's something.
I thought I did, yeah. Maybe not. I don't know.
Alright, so then the next section is talking about recreational vehicles and equipment. This is a change from your new IST ordinance. So currently it requires that these type of recreational vehicles and trailers cannot be on site for more than 72 hours. And so we removed that restriction, so you could, not for any period of time, and that instead of it being parked only for the purposes of unloading, it can be more permanent, but if it's in the front yard, we want it to be on an improved surface, so that's gravel, hard surface, etc. But we are no longer saying that it can't be in your front yard. You can have it there as long-term storage.
That's good.
Next is our single-family temporary dwellings. So this is something that was removed between your two different versions of zoning ordinances. You regularly actually use this provision, and that's why we found out that we had an oops, is that we do allow the zoning administrator, this is a change that's not, previously it would required some board approval, but we're proposing to make an administrative process to have temporary single-family units utilize an RV or other temporary things for up to a year while they're building their permanent dwelling units. So there are some conditions that are applied to that. We started with your original text in that page 4 and pulled that into there. So some of the key components of that is that these have to be kept in good working condition. These are temporary, not to be more than a year. We can allow one renewal for an additional year, and we do have a performance bond. So if push comes to shove, the township does have funding available to remove that structure, that RV or whatever the case may be, from that site if they are not compliant.
I'm sorry, this is new?
So this is new to our new ordinance, but was in the old one,
Okay.
and we don't know why it was removed.
Okay.
Oh, this was when they went back through and they chopped up, that's right, okay.
Yeah, I like it.
So it was lost. So we, again, and the biggest change is rather than it going to a board for approval, we had it administrative.
Right.
So then the next section is talking about our zoning districts, and so we changed from just chicken keeping to animal keeping, again, having the large animals and small animals, which we'll get to, and then horses, we did a cross-reference to them. The other thing that's a change from your previous, between the two different versions, is private ponds, so, which we'll get into in a moment, but they totally ripped out a section, and so we're putting it back in because we actually use it. The other components are just again, track changing from when we did the accessory buildings, instead of it being in this article, we're putting it back all together. So that's the intention with all this removal, is that it is, back in that original text. So then on page 5, the text that, is being proposed to removed is that one sentence talking about, our stormwater management ordinance that the township does not have. And so, we grabbed the original language from the previous zoning ordinance, put it back in with some additional tweaks. So what we did first was differentiation between retention and detention. So on-site retention of stormwater management, we have those standards. It was my understanding that did go through some level of litigation at some point, and so these are the standards that are preferred and upheld. And so that's what we'd like to propose. And then what we added was a new section talking about private ponds, because it was pulled under the stormwater management, but really people build ponds for their own purposes. And so what we did was we took that language and provided a more clear structure. So people can have private ponds as noted now in their uses. We have those minimum size and setback requirements, and then have different information that we want when we get that permit and process it by the township. This would be a permitted use, so it would not require planning commission review. It would be done more or less administratively.
I see down here it says if applicable, Michigan, about an eagle permit.
Correct.
Is there any situation where they would not get an eagle permit? I mean, I don't know if this township should be permitting any ponds without an eagle permit.
It depends on sizing, so I think that's part of it. So if you're doing a large acreage, part of it, I'm not as familiar with where all of your wetland bodies are and regulatory waters. I'm sure most of the township has some level of conflict, but I'm not quite certain to say all. And so that's why we put it more generally, is that when we know it's gonna be required, it's clearly in there. But in a situation where Eagle says, no, we don't require a pond for that situation, it doesn't cause a conflict.
So part B says, shall be subject to review and approval by the township engineer and township building inspector before issuance of a permit. So anybody who wants to put in a pond has to come to the township and submit their plans. So basically, it would be up to us to go out there and take a look at it, or our building inspector to look at it and figure out whether or not that would need to go to Eagle.
I would tell you everything needs to go to Eagle, from what my experience has been with them so far.
Well, yeah, because you don't wanna give permission to somebody to do something and then have
Yeah.
Eagle find out after the fact that.
We do not.
Really, we would probably need an engineer to look at a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kinda like your idea, just make sure it all goes to Eagle first. I mean, if you wanna dig a little pond in your backyard,
Yeah, I think Eagle needs to sign off on it, at least. If they come back and say,
They say it's not
we're not
their
involved,
purview.
that's fine. But
right?
I think they need to go to Eagle.
Do you know if, and in that same train of thought, would Oakland County Sediment Control always be involved?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would Oakland County Sediment Erosion Control, would they
believe so.
always
I
be
would think
involved?
They'd always be involved.
Okay,
Yep.
so I will take out the if applicable and say shall require.
Yeah.
And I think even,
In soil erosion.
right. And I think even in the situation where they would say we, for whatever reason, don't need something, that's what we would get written proof of. We
Yeah,
put
Yes,
it in the email.
exactly.
So,
Right.
again, it's not a major wall or
Right,
anything, so
correct.
we want some level of proof that you got approval to not need a permit.
Exactly.
Right.
So yeah, no problem.
Yeah, because I think sometimes people think what they're doing on their property might not affect their neighbor, and sometimes it does. And so that's the whole idea.
Because if you ever read the Eagle wetland maps, they encompass a lot of areas that I would never tell you was a wetland.
Correct, and there are different soils as opposed to regulatory
Yep.
wetland, and those can be revised.
Absolutely.
And then the next section is talking about supplemental requirements regarding automotive service
I'm
stations. So,
sorry, Caitlin, can we go back?
oh, yep, sorry.
I'm sorry. So just to clarify, so we have section A and B under private ponds. So this that first sentence there, instead of if private ponds for other than, I think we just probably want private ponds. But my question is B just a continuation of 1 through 4, or is this supposed to be a separate section for retention and detention? I wasn't sure how that was, like, so that first letter A says private ponds for other than the required purpose of retaining or detaining stormwater runoff shall be. So then is our second section specific to retaining or detaining, or is that
It's only related to private ponds.
numbers 1 through 4?
Correct.
And then B is for all ponds?
Nope, it still stays under only private ponds. What it tried to do is pervade that separate process.
Okay, I see, so this is just
Because
saying,
otherwise, most of our, stormwater retention detention goes through site plan review. It's because of your development, so we don't need special site informational requirements because it's already covered under a different section.
so then my question, I guess, would be, should that then be, B should be number 5, and all the rest of that content is a subpoint to number 5? If
No,
they're all under,
because I only wanted to apply to private ponds.
but didn't you just say this was all by private ponds?
So the, stormwater for retention and detention, that's the requirements to verify compliance is typically done during site plan review. So I don't need B, to verify compliance with that section. I, only need B to verify private ponds.
I'm not sure I understand that. Because didn't you just say A and B are all pertaining to private ponds?
Correct. So I wouldn't have to have a subsection to talk about,
I guess I'm just not understanding why we're moving that B out instead of just continuing with,
oh, I guess I did it as a train of thought difference. A is talking about requirements for private ponds, and B is the process for ponds. So that's why I indented it, is because it's a slightly different train of thought.
okay. Maybe if we can somehow just clarify that. Shall be subject to review and approval by the township engineer.
And you're gonna make, letter VI, 6, applicable Michigan environmental regulations quality, green energy, and soil erosion. Those are gonna be,
Up top.
they must pursue those and show permission,
Yep, shall require, permits from the Michigan Department.
or proof that none is needed.
Correct.
Okay, so that you're changing that, okay.
The only other thing I have on that, Caitlin, is B and D is just some, when located in a not required front or yard setback, looks like there needs some modifications on B and
Here on the stormwater section.
D. Yeah, so page 5, under site development standards, B, when located in a not required front or yard setback,
Not required.
that side yard probably, or,
Oh, I don't think the or is meant to be there.
I wasn't
Or,
sure either.
let me think,
That's okay, you don't have to fix it right now, I just, something was off there.
Yeah, cause the intention is it's not, I believe it's to maintain is not required in the required front yard. So what we wanna make sure is that the setback for a building, you don't have a pond right up against your right of way. We want it to have some length to it. So it would just be for the front as opposed to it's permissible in your side or your rear yard, you would have a pond, potentially for retention purposes. So it is intended only to be for that required front. So we would remove the or. Thank you for catching that. So then the next section is on page 6, talking about automotive service stations. So what was proposed is to removal of A, then everything else would be resequenced. So A is talking about pump islands or canopies, any principal buildings, things of that nature shall not be closer than 90 feet from any major thoroughfare right-of-way, or closer than 70 feet from any public right-of-way, or 25 feet from any service drive or maneuvering area. So by removing this special requirement on the use, they would just have to meet our current zoning ordinance requirements, as opposed to being something unique. So then on page 7, it talks about the animal keeping section. So what we did was we added 2 different sections. So you have the keeping of large animals and small animals. Large animals is a new content. We're requiring at least 5 acres, unless otherwise noted in the horse section, because we have a number associated with it. They have to meet the GAMPs, the Generally Accepted Agricultural Management Practices. So they have quality of care in there regarding density. The Planning Commission decided not to do animal unit calculations and things of that nature, which you can do, but is more tedious. We talk about different, again, manure management, but GAMPS does have manure management practices, so if they're maintaining those, then you are in a good situation. Then we cross-reference the horse and livery staples, because they have their own section requirements. And then for small animals, what we did was we changed it from not less than 10 acres specifically regarding, again, poultry, rabbits, other small domesticated animals, and tried to change that verbiage. So all small animals are being treated the same, and the idea that you want to treat similar uses similarly. So we propose to keep the setbacks the same. We propose to make it so then anything that is 2.5 to under 5 acres, those are required to be cooped, as opposed to if you are 5 acres or more, you can have free range. No changes associated with feed or animal keeping. That way, we cross-reference the GAMPS practices, which again provides quality of care guides for several small animals. Specific to the keeping of chickens, we decided not to do chicken counting because we didn't want to actually go and do that, so we're not going to. And then there's the keeping of roosters, which was otherwise not permitted, but like you mentioned, if it was under that 10 acres, that was the threshold previously.
So for number 1, where it says the setbacks, the rear setback and the side yard setback, are we going back to just changing that to be the same as any accessory building, correct?
We can?
That's what we talked about up here? Yeah. And then we're not gonna allow any roosters, no matter what the size of the property?
Correct, that's how it's currently drafted. So you could change that to return it to anything over the 10 acres.
What was do you remember what you guys talked about that, Jim?
At the planning commission, we were excluding roosters.
So no roosters anymore.
That was the thought back then, a month ago.
Was there, do you recall the reason?
Noise, nuisance. That's what was bantered back and forth.
And we're gonna require 2.5 acres now for them instead of just permitting them, allowing it.
Well, otherwise you had to have 10 acres, and we knew that wasn't happening.
No, it was just 10 acres for a rooster.
Yeah.
We allowed chickens, we just only allowed roosters on 10 acres.
Okay.
So,
10, not 5?
I think it was 10,
Okay.
yeah.
So-
5 acres for a horse.
So the way I read this, you can't have chickens on an acre.
Correct.
Am I reading that correct?
So, this is what I was hoping we would change, is
So
that,
from 2.5, between 2.5 and 4.9, so anything less than 2.5, you can't have any chickens, is that that's the way you see it?
That's the way I see it, I don't like it.
I don't like it
You
either.
can free range if they're on 5 acres or more, but between anything under 5 acres, oh no, 2.5 to 5, you can have confined in a fenced area.
Where else does it say, is this the only place that has that 2.5 language?
Correct.
I didn't see it anywhere else, and this, the way that I was reading this was that they can't be, you need 5 acres or more to free range, anyone located on a subject property with, need to be confined within a fenced, housed within a fenced area on a lot that's 2.5 to 4.9, so, 1 acre lot, I think you keep them in the house.
Exactly.
Can we take, I guess that's excluding quite a few parcels out here. If they're gonna be cooped and fenced in, is it, really necessary to have 2.5 acres? Because on 2.5 acres, 2 acres of it's probably not even used. You're doing most of your living on the half acre, including your chickens. What does it matter if we have 2.5 acres? If you're requiring them to be all cooped and fenced in at all times, do we need to have, I mean, and I'm not saying that like Woodland Pines is gonna let their people start having chickens. They probably have something in their HOA rules that you can't have chickens or something, right? But, you know, at Star Bluff, they're probably not gonna let people, but I don't know, maybe they would. So I would prefer that we remove that restriction and allow people to have chickens on less than 2.5 acres. If they have to be fenced in anyway and cooped up altogether.
I don't know, I really struggle with this because, I'll have to get rid of my roosters. But, you know, this was a question that we were asked when we all came together for the candidate interview, and I think there are a lot of people that wanna have their chickens out here in this community. We are primarily trees.
Yeah.
I really struggle with restricting them more than what we're doing right now.
Right.
I do too. Not just because of myself, I mean, for
100%.
So the preference would be to change the language to anything less than 5 acres could have chickens as long as it's cooped. Is that my understanding of the
Correct.
direction?
I think that would be fair.
no free ranging under 5 acres, I think is fine.
I'd say that's a good conversation for you and your neighbor to have.
Yeah, cause I don't even like to say no free ranging on less than 5 acres.
I know, I don't really either.
I don't like that language either.
But still a decent size property. 5 acres is a decent size piece of land.
Yeah,
2.5 is a decent sized land too.
and like you said, it's not like they're gonna be on the back 40, roaming in the woods with the coyotes and
No.
up near the house.
They're your birds. If you wanna let your birds out all day, they'll get eaten if you don't, you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna do that for a whole long time.
So Jim, I'm so sorry, I'm back to you. So it was just kinda everybody felt like we need to be more restrictive.
I think part of it was, we talked about, Caitlin, you've got an expression about enforcement, which I can't quite remember, but I think part of it was nuisance for noise. Nuisance if they're bugging some neighbor who's anal retentive and doesn't want the chickens, and then giving us a hammer if we needed it to enforce it. That's how I viewed it.
Because usually chickens, the 2 biggest complaints is that you hear a rooster and then you can't constantly keep seeing chickens on your property and you don't have chickens.
Right. Your
And
neighbor's chickens are.
yeah,
barking
they're
in your
pooping,
yard.
they're
Neighbors.
annoying your dogs, whatever the case is. And so that's why sometimes as you get smaller parcels, that's more likely to happen. Chickens generally have an area where they're more familiar with, they more or less stay in your home because they want to go back to their coop. But
So, what about making it no free ranging on properties less than 2.5 acres?
Well, I think the prior ordinance was actually, I mean, you could have chickens up to 10 acres. You had to keep them on their own property, and there was still rules in there for food. And then it was, you couldn't have a rooster unless you had 10 acres.
Yeah.
Like, it was pretty forgiving, I think. I mean, it allowed people to kind of do their own thing, maintain their chickens. So, but I also, I mean, obviously there's a part of our community that doesn't like that idea.
Have we had many complaints in the last 5 years about chickens and roosters?
Yes, you wanna know
Yeah.
what the number one complaint is? I wanna be able to have a rooster on less than 10 acres, and I wanna have more than 10 chickens. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, those are
That
big.
is the
People-
biggest
people
complaint,
come
they
in
want
and-
the chickens.
And make it.
How many
a
people
lot
in
of
here have
complaint
chickens?
against
So
the
no
chicken.
nuisance
Anybody?
complaints, right? Very few nuisance.
The only complaint that I can think of that could have included it was the one with the goats. Remember that one, where the goats like were on leashes? Do you guys remember they were attached to a
I've been
A
told
fence.
about
mailbox?
it.
Or
Yeah.
a fence or
Fence?
something?
Yeah.
And I don't remember if chickens were included, but I know that it was, in general, there was a nuisance from farming.
I know there's one individual who lives, on a street where the houses are a little closer together, and, her neighbor lets their chickens out to free range on a small parcel, and then those chickens end up in her yard, and she doesn't like them, cause chickens have a tendency to disrupt all your landscaping, you know? So, in that respect, yeah, sure, that is a complaint, but I do believe that those parcels are less than 2.5 acres. So, you know, and maybe we could have some language in there about keeping them on your own property, right? If you know.
Yeah, I think that would be fair.
Yeah, I do too. You gotta put a fence up, then put the fence up.
There's this, number 6 is any person keeping small animals shall remain subject to applicable public nuisance provisions. So there's some language there.
Do we have?
If they're a nuisance, if your chickens are tearing up same as your dog's tearing up somebody's yard. you know,
Right.
so it's a nuisance, whether it was in compliance with rules or not, it was, and that was just kind of the same thought I had towards the roosters. If it's a nuisance, it's a nuisance. If you got one that's making a bunch of noise and chasing people, that's a nuisance. you know.
But the noise, we just kinda talked about omitting, so. Farm animals, we just
Oh.
talked about omitting, so there's that.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry.
So you can't keep your cows from mooing and your roosters from crowing.
Caitlin, let's revisit the old ordinance on the chickens.
Okay, so it sounds like the general consensus is to let free ranging at 2.5 acres though, not maybe,
I don't even know
cause
if I'd
otherwise
say that.
cause otherwise it.
Can you
used
put in
to s-
language that they have to keep them on their own property?
Cause 2 previously said that chickens shall be confined / housed within a fenced area. So
A
however,
fenced area.
correct, so
That
that's
doesn't
not
necessarily
cooped.
mean,
Correct.
Okay.
I would say that
Yard,
that's not
not coop.
quite
Yeah.
the same thing. And
Correct.
so we did try to provide some clarity, the difference between cooped
Kind of corrals.
and having a fence.
I can live with that. Fenced area.
So my next question then would be really to this board, how many of you know of people who have chickens that are not fenced in, and are we gonna police that?
I'm not.
I'm not.
And I know
Well, it's
it's-
just, if you're good,
it's
I mean,
not-
I guess it allows the hammer like we
Yeah,
talked about.
that's what my opinion is.
Yeah,
what it is.
that's fair.
And again, you as the township board can choose what level of effort you pursue, so it could be having a neighborly discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
As opposed to going all the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, those are, I call them livable parameters, right?
And then it sounds like the other component would be reintroducing roosters clearly allowed in that 10 acres or more, or was it trying to be more generous to that?
I wouldn't say 2.5. I don't even know, if the current one said 10, then I would stay comfortable with that. I don't even, 5 acres might not be enough land to be far enough away from your neighbors. I don't know. Like, that's something I guess I would wanna revisit that.
Sure.
And not, maybe not decide that today.
Okay, I got that. Alright, and then the next topic is talking about horse
Oh,
stables.
excuse me, Caitlin,
Oh, yes.
number 5 under B, I think the language needs to be,
Yeah, that's also under one, We didn't get the keeping of large animals up top, is that where you were going?
I'll have to go
No,
to,
it just, the sentence doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's mimicked on A1 up top. I saw that as well. Animals shall be housing and care, shall in accordance with,
Yeah,
and it's mimicked down in B5.
yeah.
should be a wrong tense there, should be housed, cared, and proper manure
Yeah,
management.
makes sense.
Yep, thank you for catching that.
Real quick, so for B1, so we're saying no one can house any small animals, goats, turkeys, rabbits on a side yard?
We removed B1. Based on our earlier discussion.
Oh, we did, okay,
Yes.
for some, I was thinking we changed it to the 25-foot
Nope,
setback.
we just changed it to
We
be
just-
treated like everybody else.
Delete it out, sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
So on page 8 is talking about horse stables, so rather than, requiring again the 5 acres and then 2 acres per additional horse, we changed the formula to be a minimum lot size of 2.5 acres for the first horse and 1 additional acre for every additional horse on top of that, rather than requiring a minimum of 5 and then a formula.
That's under horse stables, is what you're looking at?
That's correct.
So could you so if we go up to A, keeping of large animals, I just wasn't sure how this worked. So we still have up here, minimum lot size shall be a minimum of 5 acres. But then down here, just under horse stables, which is different from a livery,
Correct.
the minimum lot size shall be 2.5 acres.
Correct. So horses are treated special.
Okay,
So they have to have at least 2.5 for the first horse, and if you only have 1 horse, you only need 2.5, but if you want more than that, or if you want more horses, you need an additional acre per additional horse. But correct, they do not need the same 5,
Okay.
and that's why it specifically
I see.
cross-references unless
just-
otherwise noted.
okay.
We knew that was a conflict, we caught that one.
So why are we doing that for horses but not like sheep or goats?
We're not doing counts. So for sheep, it's
Just
not
'cause they're so
generally
big.
accepted to have 1. Well, just because we're trying to get away from a number count. So horses, typically you don't have 10. Granted, those
Right.
that do, hoorah.
Right.
But typically you don't. And so you can do that formula counting for horses, it's easier. But for other large animals like sheep, for instance, or pigs or goats, we wanted to stay away from the number counting game because it's more difficult, and so that's why it's 5 minimum for whatever quantity that's within the best practices of camps, and then horses we do a counting because it's easier.
So under these new rules, you're gonna be able to have a horse if you have 2.5 acres, but you can't have a sheep.
Can't have a goat.
Correct. But we would know where to tell you yes or no on sheep. Because right now, because they clearly wouldn't be talked about under chickens, and if it's not mentioned, it's not permissible typically in your zoning ordinance interpretation.
Or pigs, you can't have pigs unless you have 5 acres.
Correct.
Is pig a small animal?
I think a pig is small, some pigs are small. I think
I know, I did kinda laugh, I'm like, well, a goat, but I could have turkeys, which are bigger than most.
And I think some of this does come with race, so that's why we put or similar domesticated animals, so pigs being the most volatile, sizing wise, so if they
Right.
were teacup piglets, I would join a venture to say that's probably your small animal, because it's more equivalent, with a giant turkey, weight wise, as opposed to a potbelly pig is clearly larger. So there is some level of discretion that you could go through.
I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right
Me
now,
too.
and I'm not feeling confident in making these decisions at this time.
Now, in Brandon Township, as an example, is there stricter limitations on pigs because it smells so bad? I mean, it's to say that we remove the setbacks, and I could potentially have my pigsty 15 feet off of the property line, my neighbor's house could be 15 feet off the property line the other way, and then he's gotta live with that.
Right.
That's why I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I'm on information overload and I cannot process anymore. So I can't make a decision on these large animal things right now. I don't, maybe I'm the only one, but
No, I think we need to have some more discussion on the large animal ones. I'm not comfortable, I mean, I'm comfortable allowing the horse on 2.5 acres, but I don't think there's any reason they can't have some sheep or a couple pigs to feed out in the summer. Especially where you have in there following gams. If they're following gams, they shouldn't be living in a mud pit anyway. I think we need to have more discussion on it.
Is that something we're gonna bring up to the planning commission next week? Is that what you would like?
Yeah.
Our meeting's already been canceled for next month for planning commission,
Really?
I thought.
This
Because we
month?
don't have any business, yeah.
Okay.
But I can talk with staff to verify what we are doing.
I don't know that any of this is imperative to do right at the
Right.
moment.
Yeah, I was gonna say the next
Helpful.
meeting.
I don't have a problem
It can wait a month.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the last content is regarding definitions. So the first one is talking about commercial kennels. This was a loophole we're fixing, so it's a number gap between what do you do with 5, because we clearly have ordinances for 4, but nothing for 5, so that was an easy fix. And then what we did is we provided graphics that verify how you should be treating lot lines, because it wasn't directly clear in the previous ordinance, so that's what the diagrams are trying to help. So there's a standard interior lot, a corner lot, through lot, waterfront lot, and an irregular lot. And so, generally speaking, that's what this is trying to indicate, is how would we interpret these different sides. So in general, your corner lot, you have one front, and then you have one side, which is a change, I believe, from your previous. In a through lot, when there's roads on the top and the bottom, you have fronts on both, but we do allow for you to have accessory buildings as long as you're outside of that front yard setback. In that terminology, we added 2 terms to S, setback and required setback, so that's the difference. The setback's just what the distance is, required setbacks, what does our zoning ordinance say? And then we did the same thing for yards, providing the graphics and providing that clarification on what things are what. And so, with the proposed changes, as we previously discussed, I would recommend that this is put back to the planning commission then for further deliberation, and review of those action items.
All right.
Here is referred.
Thanks, Gail.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on. You will have in your packet, Danielle has worked on this, it's building department fees. There's also, in your packet, there is Brandon, Holly, I believe Springfield's in here too, is where the comparisons come from. I guess to present it tonight, I'd like all of you to take it back and read it and get some more direction on it. We have not raised our fees in many, many years, including for our inspectors, so that's what some of this is tied to. But I had talked to Janelle earlier about this. There are some things on here that I don't like, just because I don't want to overbear our residents with it. So I guess in presenting that to you, I would really like all of you to take it back when you had time, read it, and we could get some suggestions together and back with Danielle and see if we could pass it next month. But I think there are some things on here that need some attention. So
Okay.
that's where I'm at with that. The next one is MSP. MSP had sent a revised lease, should I say the state of Michigan. Of course, Bob was the signer on the old one, so I needed to be approved as the signer. Will had looked this lease over and approved it. There were just a few small changes on it. Prevailing wages were taken out of it. Let's see what else they had. There was some paragraphs in there about remodeling that weren't even applicable. that they took out. And Will was gonna get back to me, but he did not get one other thing today, but it didn't really have much to do with the lease. So anyway, I need to be approved to sign for the state of Michigan lease. Pardon me?
How would we do that?
Just gotta make a motion.
Make a motion that we approve Kevin to be the signer.
Will this be contract?
Well, it could be any contract. Would that only apply to this lease, or would it going forward apply to everything?
They just needed minutes that I was approved to sign for MSP.
So for the MSP lease agreement, Kevin should be the signer.
I'll support that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just, I know I asked you this before we started the meeting.
I'm gonna call him.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Right now, it still includes the utility
Yeah.
costs and stuff in this lease, and they're supposed to be taking that
I'll
out.
call him in the morning. Yeah. Then we got the DirecTV contract back, video franchise agreement. It was a 10-year contract, which is expiring. It's a renewal. I went through and read it. It's virtually the same contract that we signed 10 years ago. I did call another supervisor and ask about it, and he laughed. He said, yeah, there's no getting any more out of them, because with streaming, we probably won't see another contract in 10 years. So, we need to sign this DirecTV contract.
I motion that we approve the DirecTV contract as, extension as submitted, with Kevin as the signer.
Support?
I'll support that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then the last one added on was the Renaissance Festival had asked for a 3-year special use permit. Jim, I'm gonna let you take that.
Yeah, Chip Schultz came before the planning commission, last meeting. And in light of, his request, we kind of discussed it, but we felt doing a good job. There was, I think the point was made, there was no one, other property owners or community members that came to the meeting at all. And we voted unanimously in light of Chip's performance to recommend to the board that we go forward with a 3-year renewal. The notion is so I asked the question because my confidence level is only Chip, because it was kind of abysmal in years past. And we were told it doesn't preclude that if something happens and there's a burp, then we call them in to discuss it. So I see no reason that we wouldn't approve it. That's my personal
So
opinion.
it extends their current agreement with any limitations in place on parking or traffic enforcement, any of that stuff is all?
It all remains static, with the exception of they just don't have to come in every year now. So everything is the same. That's how I read.
Correct, so they
Yeah.
still are required to submit to the township annual paperwork, to verify that they're not changing anything, but it would not require a planning commission or township board review.
Makes sense.
We don't have to listen to it.
Unless they change something.
Could we put that in, that they have to have that stuff in by our June board meeting each year?
I think that's already the basic requirement because it is an annual component, but
I don't know if it is, because in years past, we'd get it in panic mode, which would upset everybody.
Gotcha.
I'm really okay by writing that in.
I think it's supposed to be 90 days in advance of their opening. I
Yes,
think.
you are right. It is.
okay, there is some requirement associated with it, I just don't recall. And so that is a condition you could put on that special
Yeah.
land use approval, is
I
that you
think
require
I think
annual
I'd feel better
submittal,
if that was in.
Good thinking.
so annual submittal
And it is 90 days.
in
To
June
us, then, is that what we're asking for?
to the township.
To the township.
Township in general? So
Yeah.
like Daniel?
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay, just confirming where we were going with that.
Yeah, as long
I
as she
think
has it,
that's
so we
great.
have
Yeah.
it.
Do you see that often? like the 3 years? We've done it in the past, but I was just
So
curious.
it's a new concept with your new zoning ordinance. Otherwise it required regular review. So it does make sense as a way of, I've done it more for temporary uses, so like, firework tents. We've done those as annual administrative reviews, but you do the first one as a special land use to verify major logistics. But if they're not changing anything, having it go through administrative does make it easier,
Okay.
for all parties.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
I think we've done some 3-year use permits.
Well, they
before.
did have one, and the reason I had asked that is because they did have one at one point and we had trouble.
Yeah.
And we actually have another entity right now that does have a 3-year special use permit, but
They keep changing
they
things.
keep changing things. So, I was just curious if you saw it a lot in other communities, or if it was just about, a practice that you normally saw, that people came in every year.
yep, I think more communities are shifting language to be every 3 years, and then annual renewal. Gravel operations are the most equivalent, I would say, that always do an annual, even though the administrative checking everything, and even then, every 5 years do renewal.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Jim,
I like that.
you want to make a motion?
Oh, yeah, I make the motion that we accept the planning commission's recommendation for a 3-year approval for the Renaissance Festival.
Contingent upon
Contingent
submitting
upon
submitting administrative paperwork by June of every year.
What you said, yes.
Is June gonna be
That's not
90
90
days?
days ahead.
Yeah,
It exceeds it,
will they start in August?
right?
I
So,
don't think there'll be resistance if we say,
June 1?
yeah.
I'll learn it.
I'll support it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Alright. I'll need assistance.
I'll keep it nice and short. They had Art in the Valley, or Art in the Alley, excuse me, last week. They did a Memorial Day parade, and they have a Pride Day parade coming up on the 27th. I do have a couple of, hold on, nope, I'm sorry. They also have car shows coming up in the summer. Those are Wednesdays, and a team block party, but I don't have a date on that. So it could have already been. That's it, that's all I got.
Way to go, Janelle.
Thank you.
I've got just about as much, so a lot of things have already taken place, but, the Ortonville Market, Farmers Market is opening this Saturday, and, they have a Kids Day, July 26th, that, BGYA does a big booth at, and August 12th, at their regular meeting, they invite all of the the stakeholder township boards who would like to be present for that meeting. It's a summer picnic at Crossman Park at 11 o'clock, so you don't have to let me know today, but you can think about it if you'd like to go to the picnic. August 12th, it's a Tuesday at 11 o'clock downtown Ortonville. Usually at that picnic, anybody that's new to BGYA would be at that picnic, along with the people from the school district and the liaison officer, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's it.
All right, good, thank you. Jim, planning commission?
Planning commission did meet, all the commissioners were there, as we just discussed. The Renaissance Festival was approved for a 3-year special use permit. They will they will maintain communication with their supervisor. And the notion will be an annual administrative review, which we just discussed. No one in the community was present for discussion, and we voted unanimously for that. We talked about the text amendments, which we just talked about today, and other zoning and master plan. We've kind of gone all over it. There was some dialogue at the time about probable submission for the right of property.
Keith, CBA?
We did meet and discuss the proposed gas station changes on the corner of Grange Hall and M15. Had a couple of residents of the tenants 5 of them. And,
Exciting first meeting.
is all the members were there. Based on the application as submitted, we couldn't approve or deny it. So they needed to clean up their submission and go to the planning commission, and then come with the other change that was proposed here with removing that 90-foot setback and stuff. That would eliminate one of their items, so that it made sense to have them amend their package, go through the planning commission, and then come to us if they need it.
Good, thank you.
Variance.
Alright, thank you. Well, I guess we could start, we had a lightning strike, which messed up half the building, it seems like, so. We had to scramble around here for a couple of weeks, to say the least, but we've made it. I think we're getting there. Had a meeting with Oakland County Parks, trying to talk to them about doing some things in the future. I think that'll work out. It was a good meeting. Working on the construction traffic out here, which I wish Chief was here because he deserves a shout out too. I did get David Martin, our state rep, to write a letter. If anybody wants to read it, it's there. They did respond back last week, the Department of Transportation did. So you are seeing some speed signs now on Dixie. They say in July they're gonna put stop signs up on Grange Hall Road at 75. So I don't want anybody to think we're not trying. It is a mess. I know it's a mess. The Department of Transportation is very interesting to work with, but we're trying. Had a strategic planning meeting with the road commission. Basically, it's things that are coming down the road. Trying to get a light at Oak Hill Road at some point, and part of that is because Levy is gonna start developing that pit sometime in the next 5 years. So I'm hoping we can clean that intersection up. We also talked about maybe a caution light or something down here at Grange Hall and Tripp Road. One webinar I did sit in on, Eagle has a septic replacement loan program, which anymore for what these septics cost, it really could be beneficial for many people in our township to know that there is something else out there. It's state funded. You have to qualify for it like any other loan, but really from what I watched and read, it's probably easier to get a loan through the state to replace your septic than it is to go to your bank. So some people should certainly look into. Vesper did send us a letter. As part of 233, they had to request a meeting with, quote, the top elected official. So myself, and I've asked Jim Christopher, we are meeting with them tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And I guess we'll see where we go from there. We'll see what they have to say. I did get to present some scholarships at the Memorial Day ceremony in Holly. It was a great morning, very nice. So that's it. Did you know?
All right, I was gonna echo the lightning strike, just kind of so you guys know where we're at. We did end up deciding on that insurance claim. We lost our camera system, computer, obviously the generator transfer switch, which by the way, the power went out today when I was here by myself. And it didn't come back on with the generator, so that was interesting. TV monitor, we lost about half of our phones. Anyway.
The firewall.
We lost the firewall,
A switch.
multiple switches. Yeah, it's been kind of a mess. So we're not even entirely operational just yet. I would say probably 90-95%. Oh, printers, we lost at least one printer, possibly two. So still kind of working on that and getting everything submitted for that claim. That's been fun, let me tell you. I will also tell you though, there were some bills that will have been paid late because we did not have a system for a couple of weeks there to even get into to pay the bills.
Right.
That being said, we do have the new camera system installed almost all the way, waiting for a new camera because one is out from the lightning strike and now we need a new monitor, so it's like almost there all the way, but it is there. We can, you can monitor it now, just not on that screen. We are and Teresa, you can talk about the assessor if you'd like, I'll leave that for you. We have a new IT company that we've transferred over to. I did meet with the gentleman that we currently, for the PEG funds, the company, I guess, what's his name?
For Comcast?
No, well, yes, for the cable channel.
Yeah. Shoemaker Technology?
No, that's the website. So this is for like our PEG funds, for our public, education channel. So he came out and had some great information to share. So I didn't know if you guys wanted me to pursue additional information or just have him come in. But he was sharing with me that we had talked about doing a new camera and microphones. We can use our PEG funds for that. For here in this boardroom, I guess Rose Township just did it. It was about $25,000 for them. It included the camera, and they may have done multiple cameras, the switch, 2 TVs, and a laptop. I don't know that we would need all of that. But he did have some phenomenal information, so if you want to hear more about those specifics, I'm happy to send those out in an email or let you know. But we have a service contract that is good for 5 years, but it is almost up in the next few months. So that's why he came out, to see if we wanted to extend that, eventually talk about extending that contract or how we wanted to go.
That's with what company?
ELAN. This is the gentleman, so this is the guy which I learned all about all the things. All the things that I didn't know. Talked about, the cameras, the router, remote access. Talked about live streaming the meetings if we wanted that to be an option, or uploading the files like we've done in the past. Anyway, so just an FYI, good information there. Happy to share more, or if you guys want me to have him come to a meeting, I can do that too. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
There are some new businesses coming to Holly, the Holly Quilt Shop, Michigan Laser Engraving and Embroidery, and Studio Pinky, which is like an art studio. So they have some ribbon cuttings coming up, 10th, 19th, and 20th respectively. They are honoring Women's Veterans Day, June 12th in Battle Alley. I'm sorry, Women's Veterans Day is June 12th. They're doing this celebration on the 14th from 10 to noon, so any woman who served in the military is invited. Vet to Vet dinners are still the 3rd Monday of the month, and I am especially interested in this. The Vet Bod Car Wash is on July 19th. Time and price to be determined, but it sounds fantastic. It's the Vet Bod Car Wash.
There could be some interesting stuff there.
It is a fun fundraiser for the center. You will see some creative bathing suits worn by interesting veterans and friends.
Car wash.
July 19th, write that down.
Okay.
And they do have a Veterans Picnic event August 9th. See, you're all excited about that now. I told you, it sounds interesting. I was able to work a little bit, so I've been working with Shoemaker a little bit, with the Facebook site, trying to tweak a few things here and there when we can. We were able to get that Minds of Oakland button, so if you look at our homepage now, there is another button specifically for Minds of Oakland. And then really just the last thing is, and a lot of you were there, but we had a community event during our lightning strike season. And it was amazing. We had so many residents come in. We estimated between maybe 75 to 100 people came. And we had the library, we had hot dogs, what did we try to remember?
We had
Fire department was here with signs and stuff for the kids. WODA was here. We had our West Nile supplies. We did start our rock snakes, so you'll see those outside, and our new little library, or book, what's it called? What am I
Little
library, yeah, just sounded incomplete.
And we gave out a lot of annual dumpster.
Yes, and we have the new annual dumpster passes, and that was a hit, so that was great.
We ought to thank Leanne Robinson. Leanne Robinson is who donated that
Yes.
library to us.
That little library, she purchased that for us and
Yes, she did.
everything,
Yes,
so.
thank you.
Thank you, Leanne.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I forgot. I have a Republican newsletter. So the Republicans, there are 5 different bills they have introduced to try to do away with some of Gretchen's green energies. So if anybody wanted to read them, I do have them, sorry.
Was that part of your supervisor thing?
I forgot.
Just
about
forgot?
that. Yep.
That's fine.
Oh, wait, sorry, this is the last name, it's not too that exciting, I'm so sorry. Here, take one, I know.
Go for it.
This is MERS, this is for all of you too, the annual meeting. If you are interested in getting information about deferred comp, so if you wanna send some of your monies into a deferred comp account, MERS is coming in Wednesday, July 16th at 5:30. I have talked with Chief, he said he can make that work with your trainings and everything, so if you guys are interested, come check it out. You can take a couple of these days, if you wanna put them up at the fire department's fire station.
All right, Teresa.
July 16th, 5:30.
Okay. All right, well, then, I'll just start with David Martin. Representative David Martin has office hours next Monday at the Grand Lake Senior Center at 10:30 in the morning for people who are interested in going there. Doesn't matter what your political affiliation, he's the representative for this area, and he does do some really good updates legislatively, so that would be June 16th. I'm currently just working on the summer tax bill. It's about ready to go to print. We had chosen to hire new assessors, and so I think we talked about that at the last board meeting, but basically we've been working with we've been talking to the new assessor. He's going to start July 1st, but we have to set some things up ahead of time for a smooth transition. So an email address, extension on the phone, and getting some things in place for transitioning from Oakland County. So I've been working alongside with Kevin and Janelle to make that smooth transition. Right now, let's see, so I don't have the report just because of the fact that some of the things were not available, and so I wasn't able to get that done in time for the board packet put together. And but the interest rates are still holding pretty well at about 4.25% to 4.5% in most of our holdings, and the only thing that I think needs to be mentioned is G2G, which is the cloud processing. It's the Oakland County processing of our credit card or electronic checks for people who would like to pay their taxes online or here in the office. They're changing their fee structure. The Board of Commissioners down at Oakland County voted unanimously, well, I don't know if it was unanimously, but they voted to raise the fee to the user. So because they can't take the percentage out of the money that's paid out, they charge the user. So if you've ever paid by credit card here in this office or online, you're charged an extra enhanced user fee. It is going up now to a flat 3.5%. So that's higher than what it used to be. They didn't, their top, like their higher ones were 2.75, but they're changing that. They have sent us a new machine, so instead of having to swipe, you can now hold your phone next to it, you can tap, you can use the chip, all that stuff. It's supposed to be more secure and everything, and we're going to be putting that into place and using that by July 1st. If we decide we want to go with something other than Oakland County's G2G, we have to give 120 days advance notice to cancel. I'm not aware of any other options that are any better. So, although I'm not real happy about the fact that they have raised their fees, I don't really have any other options. Point and pay is 3% anyways to the user. So we're going to continue with G2G. They're going to discontinue their revenue sharing with the townships after December 31st of this year. So evidently they say that is in keeping with best practices for support. So I think that's about it. Okay?
Thank you. Public comment? Yes, sir.
Kevin, do you have any copies of that, those things from Dave Martin?
Yes. I'll get them put in. Yep, no problem. Anybody else?
I think microphones would be a big advantage because it's hard to watch the meetings recorded from the phone. the audio's horrible.
We've had that conversation. Actually, I was very encouraged by the meeting that she had with that gentleman. I'm thinking
I
that
think it'd
might
be a
be,
huge,
that
even if
might
you're still using a phone, but to have quality audio.
I agree. Anybody else?
Come on, Dave.
I think David fell asleep. I would take a motion to
I'll make a
adjourn.
motion that we adjourn the regular meeting and we reopen for the fire board meeting.
I still. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Floor is yours, Mr. Burdess.
All right, do I do a roll call?
Nope.
No, so it's
You
not.
just get to jump in.
All right, first we're gonna talk about equipment apparatus. I'm gonna start with Justin here.
So engine 4, just waiting for PM and DOT, and with that truck that completes all our primary fire apparatus for preventative maintenance and DOT for this year. Engine 2, I replaced the broken ladder rack piece after it slid off the road. It still has a couple other pieces that need to be repaired, but working toward that. 41 received new tires as well in alignment, as those were getting quite mauled. 43, I did front brake pads and rotors on, for the, to make some noise. I fixed the 4x4 issues on brush 2, was having some, it was intermittently kicking in and out of 4-wheel drive by itself, so that's now repaired. The old Chiefs car failed to meet reserve again at repo cast for the second time. Also, the spare brake parts that were in the trunk are now gone after that. So,
Excellent.
yeah. Like to request that we sell that as well as the code enforcement car for best offer. Just with poor performance at RepoCast, not sure if it's really worth wasting the time and money sending the other car through versus just getting what we can out of them.
Should we post them somewhere?
Okay.
Take bids on them?
Sure.
I said
Yeah,
post it in the
Post it
paper.
publicly.
I know a newspaper guy right there that'll take it.
So Justin would take care of posting it for sale on various sites, whether it be Facebook or I mean, there's
A lot of departments do like a closed bid where you send in a closed bid or propose a closed bid and then you take the highest offer.
Yeah, I've seen that website before.
Well, not just the website, even just on Facebook groups, a lot of.
Oh, I get
fire
you, I'm sorry,
departments,
I'm with you.
You know, do that way. So yeah, I think that would at this point be the best option with them.
It's fine.
Can we get all the labeling off of it?
They
So
will
there's
be,
nothing
yeah.
on there that identifies them as Groveland Township anymore?
Yes, yeah, the old Chiefs car is completely delabeled, the old code enforcement car, I stripped all the radio out, I have to delabel it still before I do anything with that, but it's all emergency labeling will be removed.
Okay.
Well, why don't you get both of them together and run an ad in the paper and you guys take the bids? And
What was that?
I said, shouldn't we just run an ad in the paper and just take the bids and
I think so.
the highest bidder?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you wanna do the Facebook thing, if you got a thing and
Yep.
we'll see what we can come up with, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Alright.
Get as many people as we can.
Get some exposure out there.
Justin, if you don't mind connecting and maybe sending some pictures or something.
Yeah, we can get some pictures of them together. And,
Yeah.
we can get something, put together for the newspaper.
Perfect.
Ground ladder testing is scheduled on July 8th, so all the ladders on the apparatus. This was kinda added, here, tanker 1 has been out of service, for over a month now. Working on trying to find the best price to do, the repairs, which is the quote that, Jeff gave you a copy of. So far, Jam Best One has been great to work with, and they have come in cheaper than the other quotes. It's getting hard to find fire apparatus, repair facilities that are reputable, that won't charge you an arm and a leg. Your fire truck, and they think, you know, we're gonna charge you an arm and a leg, where Jam has been very good, just knowing it's a truck chassis, they work on trucks, and that's what they charge us for, is the truck repair. So that is the repairs needed to get that truck back in service, for that truck to get that truck back in service.
Is this fire department funds or township funds?
Fire department.
From, do we need to know like what they wanna take it from, Jim?
It should be maintenance, I don't know 100% since John's not here, but I'm pretty sure that's maintenance.
Depends on how much is left in there.
Yeah.
That's also true. Well, we're still early enough in the year, so even if we've already gone over that, we can always do a budget amendment.
I'm sorry, you said 4,500?
Yes, yeah, I'd like to tack that little bit extra on, just to make sure that it covers anything else they might find during that repair.
I'll make a motion that we approve $4,500 to be paid out of the maintenance fund, to be spent on ladder one,
Tank.
or tanker one, I'm sorry, tanker one, to get back into service.
Oh,
No, it's 40.
you said 45.
Oh, I'm sorry, up to 4,500.
I'll support.
On a roll call, that one.
Teresa Bells,
Yes.
Jim Christopher,
Yes.
Keith Wiederhold,
Yes.
Kevin Scramlin,
Yes.
Janelle Keller.
Yes.
Okay. Next will be personnel. We had Sergeant Stacy Millar and Justin Rose attended the train-the-trainer PFS driving course. This allows them to conduct the driver's training course with all of our personnel. It's a really good thing, you know, when driving emergency vehicles. Justin also attended the train-the-trainer UTV course for VFIS, which you know, we have that off-road vehicle now that we got through a grant, so that make sure people can drive safe with that. He's allowed to teach that as well. Stacy also attended a fire suppression pump training in Northwoods, and Ted Reindress attended a suicide writ class, which is designed to educate and empower firefighters to recognize signs and symptoms of depression and possible, you know, suicidal risk within the firefighter service, to try to mitigate that risk. Then we have had several people interested in the training payroll re-education program where we were talking about, or the repayment program, where we send people through school. So we're gathering those apps. I think we've had like 3 or 4 so far.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Next can be grants. I'm gonna have Sergeant Millar take care of those.
So the Safer grant is done. That's a really large grant, so I'm gonna, before I sign it and send it in, I don't know, I might have to have you sign it with me, or you and John. Have him double check the dotted i's and cross the t's. It's a very big grant, about 40 hours worth of work into it, digging through numbers. So we'll send that in by the end of the week when John gets back and we can look at that. We did apply for the DNR grant for the UTV skid, renewal, because that came back today, right?
Yes.
That's the grant that we applied for in May, we don't hear anything until about mid-December. That's what we've got, fire gear on in the past. So this year we're going for a skid year, or a skid unit for the back of the wheel.
I got the email today. Official, $7,000 for CDBG funds for fire or something, whatever we could ask for. Sorry, I meant to tell you that. We officially got money.
Yay!
So
So
I believe that means we can now use it out. I can confirm, I just got the email this evening. It was, I think it was 7,000 even.
Nice.
Could you send me a copy?
Yeah. Yes, I will.
We're applying, Chief is going for that $5,000 fuel reduction Ready Set Go grant. Applying for the Safer Roads grant. I got a call into them today. There are quite a few grants out there, AAA, and I'm looking at Firehouse Subs. Some of those are matching grants, so I kinda gotta watch those grants with what our budget is and if we can match. The Safer grant's a big match. it starts small and gets bigger over the course of 3 years. The Safer Roads grant is a 20% matching grant, so that's a pretty good chunk too. We're also applying for the FSNR grant for SCBA and N95 fit testing machine. Well, see what we can get out of there. We do kind of have a wish list started of needs. Like they said earlier, there is nothing cheap in fire service. So get a list together and then kind of find a grant that might match that we can get stuff on.
We may add to the fit testing machine grant. The nice thing is you can do both of these tests in one machine now, and it, puts it into writing, calculate it in a certificate. So we're actually working with Springfield to do the grant together, so it's cheaper. So it is something we're looking into. I want to take community risk reduction as well.
We did smoke detector installs in a couple residences this month. We got a new business in Beacon Plaza, Real Estate One. They're not even open yet, they already got a Knox box. Installed, keys inside. Heather did a couple, or one residential Knox box for one today. We do have those available if anybody's interested in those. You can get those right at the fire department. We did several postings for safety, I-75, air quality, weather alerts on Facebook too.
Cover, you want to do EMS?
Certainly. We recently passed our annual agency inspection, which re-earned us our Advanced Life Support Agency license for 25 to 26. Jeff Burdess and myself and Sean Dobbs handled all of that stuff, and it went really smooth. I think it went smooth this year. We were only on with her for about an hour and a half. We had all of our ducks in a row, and it felt pretty good. So we're pretty glad about that. I have been transitioned to the EMS coordinator at Groveland Township Fire, and I recently took over this week as the ACES rep, handling all of our education paperwork and maintaining all of the records and files that we need to keep for the state. So that'll be good, settling into that pretty well. We have our AHA certifications that we are beginning to teach, BLS, ACLS, PALS, and PAIRS. I have my first pediatric advanced life support class this month, and that's on the 25th. And so that's for our advanced providers, our paramedics. We'll all be certified in that by the end of the year. And then my first PAIRS class, which is the EMT version of pediatric care, that one will begin in July. And we hope to have all of our EMTs and paramedics certified by the end of the year. So that's a kind of a step above something that OCMCA doesn't necessarily require of us, but that we're pushing ourselves to do because it's important to be able to take care of our children. We recently added a new feature to ESO that was free to us, and it's an AI-assisted narrative generation. And it's supposed to help with us for mainly billing purposes, get our narratives looking organized and well put together. And it does a really good job at taking all of the information that we input on each of the pages of our ESO report, and it puts it all into the narrative for us. And so instead of us taking time to try and type all of that stuff in, it basically auto drafts it right in for us. We're working through a few bugs with the crews right now. Obviously you have to go through, you have to read it, you can't just generate and submit, but that comes with a little bit of education, and we're going to put that out. We're working on that as well. But we really do think that it's going to help kind of put us forward as far as using cutting edge technology to help us be more efficient with our reports, helps us get more efficient billing. So that's cool.
ESO is our patient care reporting system.
Yeah.
Probably
And then,
for people with bad handwriting.
Exactly.
yeah, or bad grammar when you're typing, right? We all can use a little help sometimes. Also, we're in the process of possibly changing out our T-kits. We have mocked up a new bag. We've changed all of the things out of our old blue bags because those things are like 15 years old. We're starting to put them in one of the new bags just to give it a little bit of a trial run. At this time, I don't know if we're necessarily completely satisfied with the bag that we do have set up, but we're working towards figuring out exactly what we want in terms of a new bag. So at which point we'd have to purchase 4 of those. So when that gets a little bit closer, we'll have a better idea of those details as well. Lastly for me, I was involved today with installing a Knox box on a resident's house. And that was pretty cool. She heard about it when she was here at our community event. And so we went down there, we got to talk to her. She's a nice old lady, right down here on Grange Hall Road. And she was pretty excited to have all of her keys in one box with our ability to get to it in case she was struggling. So it was kind of cool to be a part of that. Otherwise, that's it for me.
In our operations, I've been working with Janelle and Chief with the payroll process, trying to figure out a new system for that. That's been fun. It's been so fun. But it seems to be running okay. We conducted a mutual aid box alarm system test. Actually, the county did for North Oakland County. They did a kind of like a mobilization mock disaster, where they called out to all the area departments to see what they could provide, had them actually respond to see how long it took them to get to a certain area, to give them an idea of what it would take for a large-scale disaster in Detroit, to get people together in the staging area, to send people there to respond. So it was very successful.
We had 10 departments that responded to Great Lakes Crossing in just over an hour.
Yeah.
10 full fire apparatus that would then trolley all the way down into Detroit together in the event of a massive crisis.
You already talked about I-75, so we're good there. We began cost recovery on utility companies with involving incidents for like wires down, gas leaks, utility pole fires and stuff like that. We can actually charge the companies for our time and our response, recouping some of those funds that we lose. Next is going to be the new station. This is where it gets a little lengthier. First off, we're waiting on a quote from Oakland County Radio for moving the radio equipment from the old Station 1 to the new Station 1. We should be hearing from him pretty soon. The first order of business here is going to be the security system. Over the past few months, we've gotten several quotes for the security system. The first one we got was from Locks, Keys, and Emergencies, which I believe is in Holly. They quoted $28,000, but that did not include security cameras. The one that we like the best, and the one we're going to request to go with here, is Security Designs. It's actually the same company that did the security, door security, as well as the Township Hall and all the fire stations in Springfield Township.
Okay.
So they quoted us for cameras as well as every door. So RFID tags and then several cameras. They offered two different systems. One was a server-based system, and that quote came up to $31,037, or a cloud-based system, which was $25,113, and then there's a subscription fee annually after that, which you're not going to have a server because it's all done through a cloud, and that's $750 a year. We've talked a lot about that, and we kind of feel like the best way to go would to be the cloud-based server. You're going to get updates with the app on your phones and other computers. You're going to kind of get more support from them if you're continuously paying an annual fee. So we're requesting approval to spend that on this is the new station, obviously, we're talking about here, to choose Security Designs for $25,113. Within that packet, that huge packet that we gave you, is the quote from Locks, Keys, and Emergencies, as well as Security Designs. And again, Security Designs is one we're requesting to go with.
Does this say how long the 750 is? I mean, is that?
It's an annual.
But is it locked in for a certain amount of years, or can they increase it after
Yeah,
that?
according to them, it's just an annual fee of $750 unless we change something dramatically.
I mean, it looks like here you'd be agreeing to $720 per year.
But
Or sorry, there must be, wait. No, $720, right?
did I type it wrong? Is it $750? Huh?
Well, I don't know.
That's $750. Yeah, I'll make a quote.
This one, right?
Yeah, it says 720 on this.
Yeah, you're right.
So you either,
You saved
it
$50.
got typed from 720 to
Oh,
750.
yep, sorry, it is 7:20. My apologies.
Got a discount.
Yeah, right. Bonus there.
But it looks like that is what we are agreeing to in this agreement, you know,
Are you
not
gonna,
changing terms.
are you wanting to add analog door master station intercom, or an IP-based intercom system, or
No.
proximity cards, or key fobs?
So the key fobs, yeah, I guess we're gonna need key fobs for each person. However, the key fob costs through them, and we can buy key fobs elsewhere. and-
Okay.
And program them with the system that they give us. And you can get those, I mean, down at Springfield, we buy these little stickers that we put on the back of our phones, and there's like 100 of them for $10.
Oh,
So we don't necessarily need to buy the key fobs through them at $7 a piece.
gotcha. Okay.
Just out of curiosity, Jeff, like, I know that we've certainly had some people be hired and then we fill away. Do we have any worry about that, or how does that work? Is it connected to a specific person and you just shut it
Yes.
off?
That's what it is.
Okay.
So when we hire somebody, it's a long series of numbers, and then with the app that you're paying for every year, you would go in and just deactivate that key fob. It wouldn't allow them in the building any longer.
Okay.
And the nice thing too is this tracks everybody that comes in and out of the building. So we can actually prove coverage too. When we go for ISO, we can see how many people were at the station, or even if other people came in and spent some time there. That proves some more coverage for the township.
Any other questions?
Is this part of that $400,000 that
Yes.
we budgeted for?
Yep,
Yes.
everything on here is, I mean, we knew the next one coming up was gonna be about 80 in the year. Everything.
So this was all part of what
Yep.
you and John put together in our budget,
Yep.
saying,
So we should be coming near the end, right? Because we already did, we did 100
We're about halfway.
for the sign.
We're coming down the
This
home
is another-
stretch.
Yep, these are some of the last purchases that kind of bring that.
Yeah,
This one
beautiful
here is,
station together.
this one here
Okay.
was the killer.
Exhaust system?
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be, but that one's the killer. I'll make a motion that we go with Security Designs, go with the cloud-based system for $25,113 with a $720 a year subscription fee.
Yep.
And we will have to take that out of, what did we label that money? Was it
I think that's all out of the fire one building.
building? Okay, take it out of the Fire One building fund.
Thank you.
That's the motion. Second. Roll call vote. Keith.
Okay, Jim Christopher,
Yes.
Keith Wiederhold,
Yes.
Kevin Scramlin,
Yes.
Janelle Keller,
Yes.
Teresa Bellis.
yes,
The next is gonna be, what you were just talking about, the,
Yep.
exhaust capture system. So in our old station, we had Niederman's, which the system's very worn out, it's kind of an older company. We did look into them, they were a little bit more expensive, not to mention we've actually had some pieces of that equipment go out and trying to find the pieces of equipment is quite difficult and very expensive. We quoted Hastings All Energy Control Systems, which they use like a Plimo system, which is actually what multiple area departments use, including Springfield. So we're requesting to go with them. It's $78,515. Like you said, this is an OSHA required thing for the station. It's something we need to bring this project to its completion, so.
Yeah.
and it is also part of that 400,000 that we budgeted.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got it.
Jeff, were there any other bids taken?
So the other one that we did was Niederman's. Hastings kind of just owns the area market. They're really the only one in the area. Niederman's is out of Ohio, but again, they were more expensive and we're not impressed with what we have currently.
Yeah, I don't feel like spending $78,000 on it, but we had no choice.
I know it.
So it is what it is. And like I said, we knew it was coming. Me and John had figured 80, so
Yeah.
we were pretty close.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we approve the spending of $78,515 to Hastings All Energy Control for the exhaust system for the new station.
I'll support it.
To be taken from the line item that we budgeted.
Lori, you want a roll call when you're ready?
Keith Weiderhold,
Yes.
Kevin Scramlin,
Yes.
Janelle Keller,
Yes.
Teresa Bills,
Yes.
Jim Christopher.
Yes.
Thank you. Next year is gonna be it's under gear management and storage system. I'm sure you visited a firehouse where they have gear racks that hold gear. They're very robust systems, they're nice, they're red, thick steel. This would provide us with 18 turnout gear racks, to the tune of $9,261. They're gonna last a long time, probably outlast the station, honestly. The similar systems are nowhere near the quality of this, and they're pretty close in price, to be honest with you. So this is definitely the best bang for your buck. So, request to spend $9,261 out of the same budget we talked about.
I'm sorry, is it Gear Rack then, is who makes that?
Gear grid,
Yeah, it's,
Gear storage.
yeah, fire gear storage.
Yeah, I'll make.
Actually, it's gear grid, my apologies.
I'll make a motion that we spend $9,261 with Gear Grid for a gear rack system for the new fire station to come out of fire station 1 line.
I'll support.
Now we want to roll call
Janelle Keller,
Yes.
Teresa Bills,
Yes.
Jim Christopher,
Yes.
Keith Weiderhold,
Yes.
Kevin Scramlin.
this. Yes.
Thank you. Next is gonna be, let's talk about the chief's pickup truck. So this is outfitting his truck with lights and sirens. He's received several quotes for the emergency lighting. The installer of his choice is gonna be Synergy Products to install all the lights as well as the radio equipment in the truck. This is the company of choice for the area departments when it comes to vehicle emergency lighting. Springfield Fire Chief Matt Covey actually almost has the identical truck that Chief Williams has. It's just ours is a 2500, his is a 1500, and he just had this almost the same package installed in his truck. Back when this truck was purchased, it says, as discussed during the purchase of the truck under Chief Mason, the board discussed the township paying for the completion of outfitting this truck. So we're requesting that Synergy be selected as the preferred vendor at the total of $13,247.93. The quote from Synergy is in the book. It does include everything that's needed to be compliant with DOT standards for emergency vehicles. So.
This is just the lights, not like indication, lettering.
No, so that's something I was gonna talk about next. I know there's been a lot of discussion about lettering his vehicle. Chief talked to pretty much every chief in the area, and it's gone away from lettering the chief's vehicle, and I'll tell you why. It creates an issue. When you have a fire chief in these rural areas, you know, they take these vehicles home, and it's parked out in front of their house. It kind of puts a bullseye on them first off. But the other thing is the idea around it, they can drop what they're doing and respond to an emergency. So whether the chief is going to a training in Dearborn or Detroit, or he's going out to eat with his family, you know, if a large event happens, he should be able to drop it and go to the event, right? Or go to the emergency. And what comes from that are people end up calling the station or the township and they say, why is the chief parked at Applebee's? And it happens constantly. So this kind of keeps him out of that limelight. It also kind of keeps him conspicuous from where he lives. We really couldn't find a fire department in the area that did letter the truck or was not planning on doing it next. So to mention it's expensive. Vinyl lettering on the trucks, I mean, what did we pay for the ambulance? It was like like $15,000, I think, so it was a lot of money.
None of our admin vehicles are lettered.
Yeah, especially that, the, command staff.
Yeah, Springfield has some trucks that are lettered, I passed them.
So they do have one command vehicle, and the plan is to not do the next one. So that was a Chief Graham thing, I guess, so, from what I understand. The new chief's truck is not lettered, and the next one, they're planning on keeping it plain.
The two branded Chiefs trucks are not lettered. Most of the area departments will not be lettered for chief or, like you said, admin vehicles.
Holly's isn't lettered either.
So that's now considered best practice.
Yes.
Thank you for letting us know that.
No problem.
I tell everybody where John lives.
Want a cell phone number?
Yeah. So yeah, you have any questions about that?
So we need, a proposal to, accept the, electronics for the lights.
I guess I will make a motion that we approve $13,247.93 to be spent and sent to Synergy Products for the upgrades needed to the chief's truck. Taken from,
We didn't have a budget for it, so I have no idea where we're going to take it from.
I just transferred $50,000, well, it's the exact amount, it was $49,373 in interest earned on tax collection over the 2024 tax collection year. So that was extra income, that I don't think we had even thrown in the budget as far as like, cause it wasn't township money to begin with, it was tax collection money. So however, I don't know like what line item number or whatever, but from the interest earned on tax collection,
Well, that's a
Revenue.
revenue.
That's
so
a
we would
revenue.
need to select an expense account. Where would you like to go?
how, yeah, you pick.
Let's take it out of yours.
Might as well.
You don't know where you're gonna put it. Where did you put it into?
I put it into the
But that's
townships.
not how.
Oh, I'm sorry,
How
one
it
of the
works. It goes
revenue.
into it's a revenue account, but we have to take it out of the
Let's
expense.
take it out of our capital. For now.
So we don't have a line item for just savings?
No.
Okay.
Well, we do have a very small amount, that probably would cover that we had in our initial budget. That was, we depleted it quickly and I don't remember why, like, it was a modification to the original budget, hold on.
But then this is all that is, Jeff, this is all that is necessary for chief's vehicle to be complete then?
Yes.
I mean, we can just do, oh, that's where it was, the capital outlay reserve, we only had $23,000 in there. It was basically like our extra money.
Okay, let's take it from there, that'll leave us about 10,000 in there.
You're close.
I support. Laura, you wanna take roll call, please?
Teresa Bells,
Yes.
Jim Christopher,
Yes.
Keith Wiederhold,
Yes.
Kevin Scramlin,
Yes.
Janelle Keller.
Yes.
Don't ask me for money. Actually, company training, I know you two both been bloodborne stuff and, yeah.
Yep,
you wanna take that
so,
away?
we recently have been collecting all of our annually required trainings, that's bloodborne pathogens, that's, our HIPAA privacy laws. And each employee of the fire department is required to be trained on those, once annually. And we're just about done collecting those, there's, I think, 4 individuals that we gotta get them from still, and they're on their way in, so, not too many worries there. Continually updating our employees on protocol updates when those come down from the state. Me and Sergeant Millar both sit on in on those meetings each month when they go over new protocols and things that they've changed and things that they want to address. So we make sure to keep our people up to date on those. Lots of trainings regarding different categories: adult patient assessment, adult airway, some on autism, pediatric patient assessment, and pediatric airway. Those are coming with the AHA courses that I'm about to put on. We're also working in fire training. We've developed a schedule that rotates medical CE training and fire training each week. So we're getting ready to be in full swing on that with Justin taking over and teaching us the engineer portion of operating each of our apparatus, which is an important training that several of our employees at the fire department require at this time in order to be able to drive the fire trucks, operate them, pull them up to scenes, get water, get it on the fire, and make a proper plan so that that can continue to happen until our job is done. And so we're working together on that, me, Justin, Sergeant Millar, the training committee, to make a proper plan for getting everybody adequately trained in those things.
Thank you. For alarms, 2024, up to May, we had 424 calls. This year we're up to 452. Difference between May last year we had 94. May this year we had 94, so we're spot on. There is one incident of significance. May 20th in 2025, there was a fatal accident on southbound 75, if you haven't heard. It was just north of Grange Hall at about 10:20 p.m. The fatality involved a driver of a smaller car that was traveling at excessive speeds during inclement weather when he lost control. His vehicle was then struck by another motorist that was traveling southbound. As he exited his vehicle, he was then struck by an additional vehicle, causing his death. MSP was in charge of the investigation. We received mutual aid from Springfield Fire for additional motorists, as well as NACFA, who performed some traffic control for us. So, again, another one of those incidents that's caused by this this problem. Township attractions, Sergeant Millar, you want to talk about Renfest?
We got a new building this year. It's about 2.5 to 3 times the size of what we currently have. Amy has running water. I did a walkthrough with TJ and Chip about a month ago. They're going to take care of all the repairs, the flooring, the painting, the moving of things, putting up dividers for privacy space in the back. They're gonna take care of all that for us. So that will be new this year.
Awesome. Lastly, in community outreach, we were accepted by the Kroger Community Outreach Program for our Firefighters Association. The organization number is listed at the bottom of the page there. Also, I think we provided some paperwork on that.
I think there's some out there on the table.
Yeah.
Robert.
Yeah. So we were accepted. It's been approved. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any public comment? Everybody's having enough fun? Let's second it. All those in favor?